Yeah, everything wrapped. Well, we start in July. That's the part we said. Now we can just finally enjoy. Or at least not worry about wrapping.
Yeah, we still got kids at home too, right? Yeah. Trying to get these two.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I mean, I know like adult kids, but.
Yeah, but still,
Yeah.
still have fun doubling around and doing that stuff. Yeah, no. I know sometimes it's kind of lonely.
Well, I used to love Halloween, primarily for that reason, but I hate Halloween. Because we have nothing to do. It's a little kid's holiday. Please sign in.
Yeah. Where's your clock?
The clock is broken.
See, that's exactly how I should be. Right. Freezing cold. Hard. Freezing.
Sorry for the holidays.
Yeah. It's nice and warm. And all of a sudden, I was hot afternoon. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I hope my computer starts up. Is Cameron coming? Huh?
I haven't heard that he's not.
You text him yet?
I know he told me that, Thursday that my son felt like he was going to be sick.
He was good yesterday. I'll text Brandon too.
I'll text Cam.
Well, if you guys can't start, you have 30 minutes.
Yes, but. We'll see where they are. I'm running late, so we want to. Yeah. So. So, yeah, say you just run it late. Must not have got your text.
that email for the training, mandatory training.
We're so excited about that. What'd you say?
No,
I sent you guys an email for the training for January.
Okay.
It's mandatory training, so where you're scheduled for that day.
Our city.
What?
It's the open training,
20th, what day?
open public meeting act training that we have to do every year.
That we did here, that we mentioned.
But we're combining it with Rockville and Springdale, so we're gonna have a couple speakers.
Is it gonna be here?
So it'll be in Springdale.
Like it usually is?
What date is that?
The 20th. The 20th from 10 to 1:30.
In the afternoon, during the day?
Breakfast and lunch is provided.
Breakfast. What's the date again?
The 20th, Friday,
Oh, January.
January 20th.
Could you help me with my computer? or something?
Just at the Springdale Town Office.
Oh,
Yeah, I think that's right. So we are posted out, it's open. Or just type in what we do. Like if you open it up and you want, you start. Or you can type in 6 down here. How many?
There. I just got. Need my. It should. Cameron should be here soon. It's just working regularly. Crystal?
Yeah.
What was there's a document related to the work meeting item for the observation estates. Is there?
I don't have a document for it.
That's what I was asking.
Cameron should talk about it.
Not concerned, we'll skip that one because I don't know. Let me hand these out. These, you had copies of these 2 months ago. Talking about this one. I thought Brown would be good.
Is this the email you sent us?
Yes, it's the same thing. Let's figure back to a 50 copy for us to look at.
Sean, are you starting work meeting?
Almost. You guys are ready, unless you've got some other stuff you want to look over first. Okay, let's get started on the work meeting. At what time, 6:11?
Yeah.
Sure. All right. We've got Ken Peterson, Wyatt Lee, and Sean Emmett present at the moment. Cameron Spinla, chair, is running a little late. Ron Good should be here soon, possibly. So the first item on the work meeting agenda, amended final plat for observation estate subdivision. I am not sure what Cameron wanted to discuss on that. I know there was some issues about, at the town council meeting, they were asking whether or not it had been properly noticed and everything for final plat. Also, there's something about the short-term rental overlay that's gonna be discussed, so I don't know what the amendment he's talking about. Let's skip that and go to the,
Question. On observation estate subdivisions, which one? Do
The one on Cole Road, Pocketville Road,
on Pocketville,
right? Right.
observation,
Estates
no,
is-
No, that's the one over
Yeah.
by
It's on
Baby
736.
you know where Dean Wood
Yeah,
House is? You know
the
where-
one over by Weeping Buffalo.
got it, okay.
Okay, yeah.
Not on Pocketville.
No, that's a different one. sorry.
Yeah. And it was done last year. Year before, wasn't it?
That's right.
It was 2021 approved. So we may have to go back and revisit some issues on that. I'll let Cameron discuss that when he gets here. In the meantime, today we have a lot of discussion on short-term rental overlay, short-term rental, let's see, in each of the different zones, what's possible. This one is specific to the regulations that we have written in chapter 60, which is the short-term rental chapter. We still have that, did we have that on our agenda as well?
What's that?
Remember, you wanted to bring back the
Yes.
chapter 60,
Yep.
and it was going to be eliminated completely,
Yes, we needed to.
and we need to deny it or move it on to the town council,
Yes.
either approve or deny. And this here was something that we wanted to, that I've been wanting to work on for about the last 5 years. And I was told over and over again that this was too contentious, so it- something to be put on an agenda and be brought up at the time. And I agreed that was a possibility, but I disagreed that it didn't need to be brought up and reviewed. For the purpose of not just clarifying, but and simplifying the ordinance, but there were contradictions in the ordinance when it was written. I like to go through those and read through them, and if there's stuff that doesn't make sense because it says different things in different parts of it, I like to fix that by bringing it up and going through it. There was an extensive, when this one was written, Leroy was still on planning and zoning at that time. I think our current mayor was on the town council. They had lots of public hearings on it. And the agreement at that time within the town was that short-term rentals would be okay, but only in new subdivisions. They didn't want it in full part of town. That even included like Sierra Bella, which only had one house on it anyway.
Yeah.
And it's a short-term rental house. So, but it's grandfathered there, and so it has non-conforming use regardless of
That one house.
just the one house. But any other house built after that could not be short-term rental. And we see what's happened, me personally, I can see that without that, what happens to a subdivision? There's no houses.
Do you think the reason is?
I think-
because-
Well, why I'm saying that is we have a housing problem. Houses are, until the housing market started picking up, we were having a serious housing problem here. We had 0 houses built up until about 2018. And that was like a 10, 12-year span, 0 houses being built, even at the height of the market in 2008 and 2009. Me, I think getting houses, you have a house built.
Well,
Houses can be later rented out, they can be sold, people can live in it. If you have dirt, it's hard to live in dirt.
It's true, but there was two different developments in 08 that were built yet.
Yeah, they did.
So they were trying, they were working on it.
I spoke with one of the people that live in Sierra Villa just yesterday. And not me, I live next door to them. But they told me that over the past 5 years since they moved in, the owner of Sierra Villa, the Palmers, could have sold every single lot during that period of time, just with the people that knocked on this resident's door asking, how can we buy a lot in this subdivision?
I know multiple people that tried lots there as well.
The Palmers have not been willing to sell it.
It's here.
Yes, so what I'm saying, it took a long time for those to finally, that one isn't the issue, it's the new subdivisions that we said, let's go ahead and the cutoff, the break is any new subdivision after this ordinance was written would be allowed to have short-term rentals. Anything else, there's nothing.
Is that in a certain zone?
Okay, and
Is that
that's
just
in,
rural
that was in
residential?
rural residential and residential.
So if someone developed a place in Japan, like,
Yep. So, but it would have to be a full subdivision, 5 lots or more, 5 acres. or more. That's how observation in the States. Got put in.
Yeah.
So with that compromise that was put in place, I felt that this would work. The problem is, with this one is the contradiction of how that is supposed to look.
Yep.
And so what I did through here, in the red that's written, is discussing ways that we could adjust or change that, so it becomes exactly what they had decided back then, was that these new subdivisions could be short-term subdivisions. Whether the people want it as a short-term rental or not, they have that option. We're finding out that not a lot of people are following that. Down in Santa Clara, they thought that every house would be in the subdivision they had like that. They thought every house would be there. It started out about 50%, and now it's down to only about 30% of short-term rentals. Because over time, people are like, well, there's a nice neighborhood, I want to live here, and owners don't want to do the short-term rental, and so they end up selling out, usually families that buy houses. So there's one example, I'm sure we could find examples on both sides of the argument, for and against. But again, this is what we come up with. So the red that's written here is just discussing how the short-term development overlay becomes a designation for that subdivision rather than a actual zone.
because there's not a zone.
Because we don't have a overlay, a short-term rental overlay zone. There's nothing in our ordinance. We would have to create a separate zone. And then they would have to apply for that zone change, and it would apply that overlay zone on that. We don't have that. So the intent of this was for a designation. The developer would have to declare that at the concept plan and then apply it to the final plat. That was the intention when that was written. And so, and I was there during that time because I didn't want them to write an 8-page document, I wanted them to write a 2-page document, which would have covered the whole thing anyways. This is what we ended up with.
I do,
So this is what we're working with.
I do like most of the changes you made in this document.
Yeah. There was also quite a few things that were quite redundant with what we already have in the short-term rental permitting process. It was already there. Other things, so there's, and what I did was I combined these on page 2. I took some stuff out, but I combined them into the same, those paragraphs, because they basically said the same thing over and over.
Is there a way, here's the question I have, not necessarily this, but is there a way to penalize non-conforming STRs in the, like, places that have short-term rentals in the town that aren't necessarily 100% legal through the town and not in STRs?
Correct. That's all the code enforcement
Right.
issue. And,
I just wonder, like, is that something that needs to be written in ordinance, or what's the?
I think that's the thing Cameron has on the agenda further down tonight. So, because no, we don't have it in there. And clarify it completely, so he wants to put it in there, and then we can look at enforcement.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always say if it's not a good law, you create criminals or creative entrepreneurs.
Right.
So we gotta write the good laws so people want to be following the law.
I agree.
Otherwise, we get creative and try to work around it.
Those of you that have came in, if you have not signed in, please sign it on the sign sheet.
Is there, you guys have seen, if you read it in the email and then a couple of months ago, we're supposed to have it. The idea of bringing it up on the work meeting agenda is we could discuss it, we could work through it for the next month or so. I would like to see after, but it couldn't come up until after we actually do the other ordinance and push it through to the town council with a recommendation. Once that's decided, then we can go back to it and work on it.
I like some of the changes that you made, but however, there's a lot of discussion about what we've got and what we've like. And so I appreciate you taking the time, spending the time that you did to put that together.
Really, for the biggest majority of it, all you did was take out the zone and make it a designation instead of.
That was the majority, yes. And then the parts that were taken out, it was just talking about an application, but they already have the application in there because it's in the application process.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be written in here.
Does it really matter? I think that as planning and zoning, we want to create a general plan that the citizens have helped us create. We want to be fair to all parties, people who for 150 years, they've had neighborhoods here in town, built neighborhoods, families. You live in one of those neighborhoods. You kind of live in one of those neighborhoods. And I think that has to be a discussion as we go forward as to how those neighbors want to keep, like the current zoning has, that those areas are for short-term rentals are restricted to new development only. and that they cannot be in, unless grandfathered, they cannot be in existing developments or resident areas.
Yes, that's something.
Is that
that's
still
already
in,
here.
what, is that still
Yes,
here?
that's still there.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's number, I think it's 2 or 3. I can't remember.
So you remember when we had this, well, we had to have that special meeting for the zone, the overlay zone change for the Staples subdivision, right? Like, this just takes that out because we don't technically have a short-term rental zone. It's just a designation that you apply for when you create a new subdivision. It's not,
And in that, we require them already in the ordinance, put it in their CCNRs, we require, there's a few things that were brought up in one of the, when John Staples did his subdivision, that we want to include as well. I put that in here, but I didn't have the exact verbiage. So I said, this is association. Okay, in the CCNRs, I want the exact verbiage that was put into that one, they required them, and the town council required them to put in about the enforcement. They want the CCNRs to actually have the enforcement clause in there, because we can't override the CCNRs, but so that's why they wanted in the CCNRs to have the enforcement that we're talking about.
So does yours in 60.02, section C, number 1, it says that subject to conditions set forth in this subsection, an owner of a real property may apply for and obtain simultaneously with the final plat approval subdivision, a subdivision overlay zoning designation. Does yours have that word really basically as well? That the timing of the short-term rental, this is 60.02 C1.
that'd be 3-1.
3-1. This is the exact copy. If it doesn't have a line through it for red, the red is new. The cross out is something I want to take out. Everything else is exactly as the document.
Here's how it is on the general ordinances.
So that is exactly
Okay.
what it already is, and it should,
Just has some, the letters aren't the same as
yeah,
far as the head.
that's all. But I didn't read,
I got it.
I didn't write.
I imagined that.
Yeah, okay. I didn't write anything new. I just either added or subtracted some.
So that, the one you just read is still in his. Yep.
Yeah.
The only thing that's changed is it's the zoning is taken out and then it's put as a designation. So,
Okay, so why would we not have it as an overlay zone instead of just having it as you mentioned just now, it's just part of the development zone?
Designation.
So it's-
What's the purpose of having it in there in the first place?
of the zone?
Having it as a overlay zone, yeah.
Okay, so the idea, I believe at the time, was to have it go through a process like a zone. So in part of this, it says they must go through that process. But in another part, it says they can just go ahead and do it alongside the process of applying for a subdivision. Okay, which is public hearings, all the plat maps that have to go, the preliminary plats, the final plats, all those have to come through us. So it was just redundant for the meetings that they would have to do for something and a separate it didn't say you had to do a separate application, but it implies that there's another application. That application was never provided to anybody. So what I'm trying to do is just say, look, let's do it all at the same time. They have to come to us for a subdivision anyways. They have to do a preliminary plat anyways. Let's make them at that time say, look, you can be a short-term subdivision. If you put it in your CCNRs, you follow all the rules that we have here, and then it's just a designation. Anybody who applies for a building permit then has to build their house, then they can apply for a short-term rental permit at that time. So we're 10 steps ahead here of what actually might happen in the short-term rental here. So as the developer can't foresee who's gonna buy that lot, who's gonna build that house, and if they want a short-term rental. So we're trying to separate those two into their respective areas and say, look, it's a designation. The developer has to designate, they have to put it in the CCNRs, it has to be, approved through us anyways. And then they can move ahead with whether or not the actual builder or the landowner wants to do it with them. Hi, Bronwyn.
Hi,
Thanks.
so, we're still in the work meeting, right? Okay.
We'll take a couple more minutes.
Okay,
We're-
well, then,
we're-
good,
we're
because I have a
waiting
lot to say
for-
about this.
We're waiting for Cameron, so.
So I'm hearing, you'll have to catch me up partially. But I just want to throw this out here. I think the overlay zone is a problem to begin with. It's a problem. Our definitions are bad. They're not clear. The short-term rental thing has become a circus. I think to do anything right now until we have clarified what short-term rental is, and until we have actually decided what it is we want as far as short-term rentals in this town, I don't think we should be messing around with it. We need a better plan than this Band-Aid thing we're trying to do. I'm really in a bad mood, so I apologize for that. Whew, I'm lit tonight, but I'll tell you. I mean, I think it's so evident that there are many times more short-term rentals than we need, than we can safely sustain, than we can police, than we can regulate. I think it's ridiculous. And the problem is not the rentals per se, because I think as a town and as citizens of the town, you want to be able to do what you want with your land, right? Like, we want to have residential hosting that allows short-term rentals. That is a positive thing for the people who live here. It makes it so they can make enough money to stay here, job for their kids, whatever. But to be farming this out for developers, be farming ourselves out for developers based on the fact that the short-term rental designation is such a draw for developers, really makes me mad. And I don't think it's right for the town. I think we should find ways to support residents that live here, that want to make money with rentals, let them do it. But there are how many more times than the overnight people that live, how many more times, how do I say this? There are so many more people that stay here for one night than there are people that live here. That is not a good formula for the community. We gotta do something different, and I feel really strongly about that. So this work meeting shouldn't be about switching little pieces of this around. We need an overhaul. We need to get rid of the short-term rental overlay zone. We need to talk to the community and figure out how many rentals do we really want, and where do we want to focus that? I am not happy or willing to have developers coming in here and absolutely becoming parasites on our beautiful place that we live, on our safety, I'm not happy about it, and just can't help it. So we caught me tonight, but I can't be gentle about it. I'm very strongly about it. So
Perfect, thank you. With that, you had the last word, so we're gonna,
no,
I was hoping Cameron was walking through that door in a moment, but looks like he might be a little later than anticipated.
Okay, I want to say one more thing. I also don't think we can mess around with people that already have, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to mess with people. I just want to put a stop to it. Does that make sense? We need to cost anybody money, but I've already been through our ridiculously haphazard process. That's not something that needs to happen, but as far as changes in the future, starting now, yes. Yeah, thank you all. Sorry.
We'll probably see this on this or something, just so we can have a discussion on a work meeting in the future. I'll talk to Cameron about that, and see what he thinks. So we can keep the discussion going, so we can find some kind of resolution.
Thank you.
Let's go ahead and start our regular meeting. Again, I'm Sean Emmett. I'm taking over for Cameron, our chair. Who is soon to be here. Again, we have Tim Peterson, Wyatt Lee, and Ron Gooch, and we're supposed to be
I just talked to Cameron.
Angelina.
Oh, Angelina.
You know, she's okay. Our alternate, she's not here tonight. I'd like to excuse her. All right, let's so that's called to order. Is there any declaration of conflicts of interest?
I have conflict of interest on item G. Zone change, currently residential, highway resort zone.
Okay. And anybody else? Common, any conflict?
Of interest?
Of
No.
I need to clarify.
Please.
Ken? No. And the no. Conflicts. Review and possible approval of the draft minutes for November 2nd, 2022. So I was not present at that meeting, and so I could read through them, but
I didn't see any issues.
particularly didn't think so.
Oh,
Good. Trent, did you have any issues with the minutes?
I didn't read them.
You were here at the meeting.
I was here at the meeting.
Okay,
I propose that we read them and approve of them next time. I make a motion.
okay.
Second.
There's a motion by Ken that we will postpone the approval of November minutes until next month. And Bronwyn seconded that. All in favor?
Aye.
No,
He read it.
They've been in the folder for a month.
we know that. We know it's that.
Yes.
It's just-
Actually, I did see them.
They're very brief and very,
They're very.
There's really-
Did you want to take 2 minutes and read through them? We'll take you 2 minutes. 'Cause
You want to give me this up?
Wait. We're taking a vote, so we should.
We are, and he said no, and I said no, so it's a split vote, and the vote fails.
Thank you.
So we will either take another minute to read those, or we will take another motion.
I make a motion that we
Just
Bring
read
it
them. Yeah, you want to just read them real quick? Want to skim them or? no?
Yeah.
Yeah, just skim them.
Somebody show me.
Okay.
They were very brief. I actually want to thank our town clerk for doing those minutes very succinctly, very simple. Just follows the agenda. And Cameron's not here. Lenny, this is God. Can you hear me?
Yes, now we're not talking to them instead of us.
I make a motion that we approve of the draft minutes from November 2nd, 2022.
A second.
Okay, we had a motion to approve those minutes from November from Wyatt, second from Bronwyn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that's unanimous. Those are approved. Thank you for that. Thanks for taking a couple of minutes for that. All right, we're moving on in the agenda. Commissioner comments. This is the point where you could really. Is there any particular things you're working on? Anything you want to
I am
address?
actually working, my comment would be that I am working on, and it's because I'm trying to be careful, I am working on short-term rental ordinance. It's related to that, as well as a repeal of the short-term rental overlay zone designation. So working on that, so just hope we have a lot more discussion about it, because I'd like to get something here that's complete, and that will last, and it makes sense to people, and it won't have people going back and forth, not knowing what we're doing. I wanna address this in a way that's good for us, or a longer term solution.
Good. Are you looking at just the short-term rental side of it, not the residential? housing?
No, so yes, I am looking at that, and so there's three parts, which we should cover in the work, we won't talk about that now. Because I just like to discuss that way, but it includes residential hosting, the mandate that they have, that the subdivisions that are short-term rentals have a single management thing. That was a concession made that's actually kind of unnecessary. For certain reasons, so we're kind of the way to structure that better. I know it was a compromise, but it encourages. Don't worry about that. Yes, there's about 4 parts to it, and so.
Good. Good, well, we'll look forward to that discussion. We look forward to the discussion then. See where that comes up. So, all right, is there any, Mike, do you have any comments and working on Kent?
No.
Yeah, we get together for like, when we're ready to tackle that.
Yeah.
So, yes, that will be a long. Awesome, okay, moving right along, open forum. Typically, just a couple of minutes, and anything that's not really on the agenda, it's not a public hearing item already, because there's lots of public hearing items on the agenda. We'll get to those here in a minute. Is there any public forum, public comment? Awesome. Like to thank all of the public for coming. There's a good crowd. So lots of public hearing stuff, lots of items to discuss. So welcome. Let's move on then to item number 4. I'll take a motion.
I make a motion to close the public meeting and open the public hearing.
Motion by Wyatt. Second by Camp. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we are now into the public hearing portion of our meeting. We'll start with A, which is an ordinance amending and restating sections. There's a whole bunch of sections. Start from 2 clear to 16. Virgin Uniform Lulu ordinance regulations about enforcement of the provisions of this code. Put it more simply, this is for a code enforcement officer being added to the duties in lieu of. And this was written by someone on the town council and then put on a public hearing, so. Open to the public for any comments. Would you scroll up on that just so I can get to the definition one? And if you could make it a little bigger. Lenny would be happy. Okay, so I just wanted the 2.12 just to read to the public. Code compliance officer, local official designated to enforce the all regulations in town other than building and construction regulations. So that's what they're looking to do. But, and then looking, well, it has to be in the ordinance and then they would be looking to hire somebody to do this. work. Awesome. Seeing no public comment on that, I'd like to welcome Cameron Spinlove to our little discussion, and I will pass over the microphone to him to continue chairing this meeting. Thanks.
Thanks, Sean. Sorry I'm late. What item number are we on? Sean?
Be on the public hearing.
B?
B.
All right, so this is ordinance chapter 16.22 standards for conditional standards by use. This is the definitions for the lodging, correct?
Yes.
Yep. So this is not new, this has been, if you've been to other meetings, we've talked about this before. So this will be the first public hearing, right? Second
It's
public,
continued.
just second public hearing on this one. Anyone have any comments on the definition changes? Up to the microphone, if you have a comment, state your name, please. Thanks, Lenny. I'm sorry, we have to have you come to the mic.
That's okay, I'm just wondering where we can get a copy of this. You can't see it on the screen because it's not large enough.
So there's a copy there's a copy available from the public hearing website. Also, the clerk can send out a copy to you as well. Tonight, I don't know where you're gonna get a copy.
A suggestion, maybe you could make copies that could be on the table. I'm Lenny Brokaw, by the way.
Okay, thanks, Lenny. Should like paper copies available of the ordinances. Any other comments on this one? Was there any comments for this from emails that came in, Crystal?
No.
Right. The next ordinance is gonna be, so we'll move on to item letter C, this is ordinance amending chapter 40.08, 34.04, 32.06. This is these changes were made based on public input from the definitions that were submitted last month. So these ones go hand in hand with the chapter 16 changes, specifically short-term rentals. So the concerns from the last public hearing about the definition changes was concerns about short-term rentals and the definition not regulating them enough, and so rather than change the definition, what we did is we went into the chapters, we went into the commercial zone, we went into the rural residential zone and the residential zone in town, and we put specific regulations there on short-term rentals. That was the changes made. Is there any public comment on this portion?
Could you recap the changes that were made?
The changes that were made to these chapters?
Yes.
Yes. Let me get that pulled up. Is it? Okay, it's behind me. So the only changes that are made on this are the ones in red, right? Everything in black already exists. So chapter 40 is the commercial zone. The commercial zone runs from the the west end of town all the way to Pocketville Road along the highway. So the change that was made to that one was no short-term rentals in this zone can be constructed either in whole or part of canvas or other similar materials. So the goal for this was no tents could be considered short-term rentals in the commercial zone. And then if you go down to 34, this is the rural residential zone. So short-term rentals are only permitted in new subdivisions. I don't know, I must have made a mistake when that got underlined, but that already exists. So number one already exists there. Again, no canvas or other similar materials. B is you can't use recreational vehicles, travel trailers, motor homes, anything that's built on an axle, even if it's secured to a foundation, still cannot be used for a short-term rental in that zone. And then C is the properties may not exceed 10 bedrooms. So that number 10 comes from the fire district. That's the fire regulation rule. That's where we started with number 10. And then in chapter 32, this is the residential zone. We removed short-term rentals as part of a new subdivision. We removed that from permitted use and moved that to prohibited use in the residential zone. And that's the summary of the changes that were being proposed.
My concern is 10 bedrooms in a residential area seems excessive for short-term rentals. I find that, and I think a lot of us find that unacceptable.
Thanks, Darrell.
My name is Stan Burt. I just wanted to make a comment on a couple things here. I moved to Virgin for one reason, and that was to escape the place where I was living before. I had a short-term rental next door to me, and that was not the most pleasant thing in life. And also, I moved out here for the serenity, the quiet, the small town, and on and on and on about being away from the big city. And that is why I'm here. And I think this short-term rental altogether is going to cause us nothing but problems. And I wish we'd take a closer look at it and really find out what we're representing is the residents that are here now, the residents that want to move here for the peace and quiet, and also we're going to look at that sort of thing. So that's what I wanted to say there. Thank you.
Thank you, Stan.
It's Pat Galvez. Crystal, I can get your help in a minute with this 10-bedroom line. If I understand this document, if you scroll down, there's the proposed ordinance. And that 10-bedroom line is missing down here, what the town council would be approving or be reviewing and appealing, or reviewing and possibly approving. So there's kind of an inconsistency there. So on here, it's a F1, and that item C is missing on this one right here. So if that needs to be, the proposed wording should match this document, then just kind of cut that is missing. But I agree, the question of 10 bedrooms. I know we talked a month ago at this meeting, it was about keeping control of rentals. And 10 bedrooms to me means kind of a big group and a big party house, and that was a concern brought up a month ago at this meeting about keeping rentals controlled around established year-round residents. Thank you.
Thank you. You said Pat, correct?
Yeah,
Pat Alves. Thank you.
No longer the conversion, but it's my understanding that short-term, April Gates,
Thank you.
and I've sold a lot of vacation rentals. And it's my understanding that it's 10 occupants before you need fire sprinklers, not 10 bedrooms. So that might need to be clarified. So you can't advertise over 10 occupants unless you have a fire sprinkler system in most places. And I thought it was International Fire Code. I've never heard a 10-bedroom rule, but I could be mistaken.
Thanks, April.
That might solve some problems for y'all.
Careful when you go out. You might want to sneak out and not get jumped. There's so much like rentals around there. Anyone else? Oh, thank you.
Darlene Pope again. I have great concern about this hearing and the explosion of short-term rental changes in definitions and overlays, proposed overlays, even though repeated, and the zone change, even though repeatedly the citizens have expressed a desire to limit this. It seems to that, once again, are we being heard? And I also know on the town website, there's an ordinance that hasn't come up. And I don't know why it's not up on this agenda, to modify or even get rid of short-term rentals. And I have a concern about pushing these on without that also being in a similar, at the same time, address. I'm really concerned. It's very scary. It's also suspicious because it is December and a lot of people aren't able to attend.
Thanks, Sarah.
Randy Brinkhoff again, what I have to say might be redundant. I think the town needs to ask this commission and the town board why we need short-term rentals in Virgin. I don't like it. We're a sleeping community. I know people may be a little, I'm not going to use the word greedy in the sense of greedy, but maybe they want to make more money at the expense of some of us who moved here to have that bedroom community and not have neighbors rent out their homes and have people disturb the neighborhood by comings and going of people that do not care about this town. They don't care about being noisy. There is no firm control right now in this town with those SDRs. I'm very sorry to say I'm disappointed in the town council for even considering short-term rentals in Virgin. I don't think they belong here. I was born here, raised here, I've been on all the boards. And our goal back in the past, and I think it should be in the present, is to maintain quiet neighborhoods, and you cannot have them per se with short-term rentals in town. I do not like them. And I think that's the whole crew of the matter right now, is people are standing before you and say they don't want them here, and I certainly don't. Thank you.
Thanks, Lenny. Anyone else?
My name is Karen Brinkerhoff, and I definitely am against it. I've seen a few families in town that have gone with everything they're supposed to, follow the directions, have beautiful, nice, quiet ones, and we never have a problem with them. And then we have some that absolutely do not go with any of the rules, do not have any permits. And they are the ones that are keeping us up every single night that there's somebody there. We're having problems, we're calling the cops constantly. And I don't feel like there's any way to enforce it right now. So I don't understand why we're going through with more of them if we can't even enforce what we have.
Thanks, Karen.
Yeah.
Anything else? Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, they're
So just to clarify, the changes today are not changing whether we allow them or don't allow them. We change it today. Those are stated. Anyone else? All right, we'll move on to number D. Now, this is a zone change from rural residential to commercial. This is located at V-2-1-21-2102. This is the property that is just to the west of Balcony. So we'll take any public comment on the requested zone change for this parcel. If there is any. Okay, we'll move on to letter D. This is a zone change, Jeff Lee, Quail Mesa subdivision. Currently rural residential, and this is to add a short-term rental overlay. Public comment on the this change.
So once again, I hope this group knows their history on how the people who live here feel about HRZ south of the river. In this mega drought we were in, I don't see why we are even considering this. And besides water, which we have very limited hookups remaining, electricity availability is limited. And I don't see the purpose in doing things that the town, the people who live here, residents have clearly stated over and over again that they do not want. And here we go again.
This is the zone.
That was Darlene Pope. Darlene, were your comments, was those comments for
On the rezone for
the Jeff Lee property
Allen Lee,
or for the
excuse me.
Allen Lee property? Okay, so I'll just move those comments down to Allen Lee property.
Isn't that what you just?
No.
No, this is the Jeff Lee property. This is the subdivision.
No,
No,
we
this
are
is the
on
long.
the long property.
No, we
Passed
finished
that.
the long. We went to
So
the
this
next.
is Jeff.
Jeff Lee, Quail
My
Mesa.
apologies.
No, I'll just move your comments down.
All right,
Thank you.
very similar to the Jeff. Department.
Yeah. they both have it. Thank you.
No, same comments.
Oh, same comments. Okay. Gotcha. Any other comments on the Jeff Lee property, Quail Mesa subdivision?
Highways, Pat Galvez. Your name's Bronwyn. So this is an issue of taking this Quail Mesa property, if I understand correctly, and adding the STR overlay.
Correct.
And the STR overlay is the issue that there's ordinance on the pending legislation on the town website. So again, I don't know how much has been invested in this, but it's an issue of when do we draw the line and stop doing this because we're running out of water and other resources. So last town council was in the town newsletter very big on water shortages of the future. So we need to think really, really sharp about approving these things, or we don't want to burn people that have maybe had promises made, as Bronwyn has said. But there's got to be some definite pullback and saving for those of us that have been owners in this area and live here. Thank you.
Anyone else on the Jeff Lee property? All right, the next one is going to be item number F. Justin Christensen Zion Landing subdivision. This is located at Pocketville Road. It was across from the old dump. If you remember where that was. This will be a currently rural residential, and to add the short-term overlay as well. Just for general information, this subdivision was approved a couple of years ago. Right, 2 years ago, then it came back for reapproval recently. The subdivision has. Did you guys submit your final plat?
Well, yeah, I was going to give you some insight, but we have not submitted our final, or we have our final plat, we updated the CCRs and have everything for it, but we're kind of in a position where we gotta make some decisions on the sewer. And if the SPR gets approved, we're gonna either pass it or probably do it on the system.
Okay. So no final plat. Comments on the Justin Christensen Zion Landing subdivision, short-term rental overlay. You want me to just put the same, Darlene?
And sewer hookups, just makes it worse. And changing rural residential, they're doing their own sewer system.
Yeah, there won't be a change from rural residential. It'll just be an overlay on top of the rural residential.
Okay, Pat Galvez, I'll say ditto again about the same issue, but I do believe I was at the town council last month. I believe this gentleman was caught with a verbal agreement that was for his project, and there were things that were missing or lacking, and he had to go back and I guess make a second request. I'm not sure of all the details.
I wasn't in council last month.
Oh, okay, my apologies. So then I retracted to stick with the same thing about where do we draw lines, how much has been put into this. I know the one up on Mesa, Quail Mesa has been in the works for a few years, where they have come on with investing money into the project, but that's an issue with zoning and the town council to contend with.
Yes, thank you. This one would predate Quail Mesa.
Predates that. Okay.
Anyone else for the Zion Landing? All right, so the next one is letter G. This one is zone change Lee parcel B 2148 A 1 8 A and B 2143. Currently rural residential, they wish to rezone to highway resort zone. Just a note for this one, Darlene made comments regarding this subdivision a little, or this zone change a little earlier under item number D. Sorry, item number E. She stated that the dislike of the members of the town for extending highway resort zone to the south side of the river. Also about water and a few other issues like that, so. Anyone else have any comments about the zone change for this project?
Alan, this piece of our family property. I don't know how many of you know, but a couple of years ago, that was all zoned potential highway resort zone over there because everybody was having such a fit about things that were going on the east side. So we decided to move some of the potential business stuff to the west side, excuse me, the east side. And this was zoned potential highway resort zone about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. And there was not any opposition or comments about it whatsoever at that time. And I've just had a few people approach me wondering if they could, if I would be interested in selling them and what kind of projects they could do in this area. And to do those things, I kind of need the highway resort. It would be easier if I had the highway resort zone there. And so I just decided to go ahead and apply for it. Whether it gets used or not is that, I don't know. But right now, I just was gonna get that on there and so they could if they wanted to.
Is it agriculture?
Rural residential.
It's rural residential.
Do you identify where it is exactly?
It starts at the bridge,
Your bridge?
the one going across the river, the Rio Visión, goes from there east.
So you see that Camille Del Rio? That's the road that runs right by the hotel. And then the Entrada Drive, that's gonna be the bridge. Right after the bridge. So you can see that piece.
So,
Right, that's the bridge.
Right. And so which lots?
This one, the one highlighted. This lot and that lot.
Which side's the highway on, Cameron?
This is the highway.
Right there.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm switching over and over.
She keeps moving.
I can't fit it all in one page.
Anyway, it's
So
all,
smaller lot than the other one.
it's all out in the hills and it is all quite a ways past.
is it?
Well, for easy
Yes.
reference, it'd be probably from about the TV tower east, or the
So,
cell tower east. It might come down to the edge of the road right there, but I'm not sure. I believe it does, actually.
over, it goes from basically the TV tower to the,
Yeah.
What's on the west?
The west side of it, that is John and Jeff Stevens subdivision.
Okay, anyone else have any comments on this zone change from rural residential to highway resort? Pat?
Pat Galvez, this large lot has got 3 highlighted numbers of the same lot. And then there's a second lot that is below that Crystal's been trying to show us. So there's 2 property parcels there.
Correct.
Okay, and this large one here is again, south of the river, not on the highway. And then the second one is at the very bottom, kind of an L shape, and it comes up to the highway. So I guess highway resort zone has the word highway. And so one does come adjacent to the highway, the other one doesn't. So I would be against a large lot, and I'm also just against any more resorts in the town, again, due to water shortages. I bought property in '99, been paying taxes, water rights. Never did I think we would be running out of water in my lifetime here. So I think that we just have to stop creating more resort opportunities and short-term rentals for this town. So think hard about that, please.
Thanks, Pat. Anyone else on the Allen Lee property? Properties. All right, we'll move on to letter H. This is the zone change for Cannon / Jordan V77-A from rural residential to add the short-term rental overlay. This is 10 acres, right now? Well, this is 10 acres. Right off of 100 West. There you go. So 100 West would be
The next street over.
next street over. So the other side of the park. Go ahead.
Darlene Paul.
Darlene.
So this one is concerning to me as well because it's in the family area. And remember when we had a discussion about lighting, that a gentleman came and spoke about right around here isn't a retirement area, it's a family area. And smack in the middle of our town, or especially in our old historic town, there's another 10 hookups of our remaining, what, do you know how many water hookups we have remaining?
About 300.
All right, so there's at least 10. And with all the other subdivisions up here, how many does that leave us that are not going to be for families?
290.
That's one.
So
So then there's the other one that you just mentioned, up Pocket Hill Road. There's the Jeff Lee.
So those hookups have, the hookups for most of those subdivisions have already been allocated. Those are included in the counted one.
Where is there a document that citizens could see,
You'd have to check with the town office.
the town office? Because I mean, it's a real concern, and it's not just a new concern. I've been hearing this from all areas of town. All areas of town. For years.
Thanks, Darlene.
Sandberg, and just kind of, what I see up there is we want to turn this area in an established neighborhood into a short-term rental. And I know if I was living in this established neighborhood, I really wouldn't want that. I've gone through that before, and didn't have pleasant times with it. It wasn't the worst thing in the world, but could have been better. And I think we need to look at what our residents and what our voters, and what our people in town want, other than just trying to commercialize things like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Stan. Anyone else?
I didn't plan on speaking tonight, but I see your name, Paul Group, sorry. I just lived down the street. I don't know anybody who lives close to short-term rentals that's happy about it. It is a frustrating thing for people who live in neighborhoods where these exist. And just philosophically, I kind of have a problem with this in a residential area because what you're doing is bringing a glut of people into this little community who have no vested interest here. I don't think in a residential area that people ought to be here that don't either rent or own and reside here, where they have some kind of vested interest in the neighborhood. Just looks like trouble to me, and I think it has the potential to really harm the quality of life down in this part of our historic part of town. That's a bad idea.
Thanks, Paul. No one person likes living racks, short-term rentals.
What's that?
No one person. Because it used to be a meth house next to mine.
Pat Galvez for the last time. Since this is the last issue about short-term rental overlay. I was looking under the Hulu chapter 60, talks about short-term rentals, 60.02, item C, item A. Under A, it says these rentals are they necessary or desirable to provide a service which contributes to the general well-being of the neighborhood and the community. It's one of the guidelines as it is now written. It's followed by point B, saying that short-term rentals should not be allowed. They should not be detrimental to the health, safety, welfare residing or those residing in the vicinity. So there's some existing guidelines now that should be reviewed with this issue as well as the other 4 or 5 we reviewed tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to revisit, I don't know if you saw it on the folder, but this long property, there was a comment by Jeffrey Herrick.
Oh, yeah, the letter.
Just want to put that in.
We'll come back to that. Thanks, Sean. Anyone else on the Halcan overlay? Okay. Yes, there is a letter. Everyone should have received that letter. And it's in support of the zone change for the property number was that for the long property V2-1-21-2102 from residential to commercial. All right. Number 5. Scott. From number 5.
All
right, motion to close the public hearing.
White's made the motion, second.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thanks, Ken. Thanks, Wyatt. All right, so now we'll move on to the public meeting. Item number A, discussion and recommendation to approve or deny an ordinance amending and restating chapter 2.1, 2.20, 2.22, 16.20, and 16.22. This would be the ordinance to add the language of code enforcement officer to our ordinances. And its definition. I apologize, I missed the public comment on this one. Wasn't on. Discussion?
I've got something.
Sean, go ahead.
On this particular item, even though I know the town council has been reviewing this and discussing options, I don't think the options have been vetted well enough. And I also noticed that we have been held to a process of taking ordinances through in a particular way. And that was harped on us for the last 4 years that it wasn't being done right. This follows the old process, we wanted to follow the new process. Therefore, in this, when I was reviewing it, section 2.22, the actual says enforcement. That's particularly where I think we need to focus our attention on. But to follow the proper process, I know we had a public hearing on it, but I believe we should postpone this until next month, put it on the work item agenda, discuss it in a work item, figure out exactly how we would like to see that and in the best way possible for the town, and then move some kind of document through at that point. Personally, I don't like how this is written and how the direction it's going. I think it could all be done through the zoning administrator, having delegation authority. And so I'd like later on make a motion if there's other discussion, otherwise I'll just make a motion.
What's the reason for the change? You know, is there certain?
So from the discussion that, so this ordinance came from the town council and the mayor. And from their discussion, it was they wish to separate the zoning administrator's duties from the enforcement or the enforcement and so they wish to split those duties off. And in order to do that, they felt like they needed to add code enforcement officer into our ordinances. And you can see the changes, like the change, not necessarily the changes in 2, but the changes in this PDF is a piece of crap. What this changes in the specific chapter, you'll see adds the language of code enforcement and removes the language of zoning administrator. So it was kind of my understanding that there was a desire to separate this out, and then also a desire to have an enforcement officer.
Our only job is to make sure it's in the
Yes.
the correct way.
Yes. Our job would be to take public input and make a recommendation, because this does involve changes to the land use ordinances.
Right.
Ken, did you have anything on this one?
I agree with that.
I think that, I think this stems from the fact that we are exploding in developments and growth. And it's very difficult for Gene Garotti, who's involved in this suggestion, and has agreed in parcel to this separation. That he can't take care of everything when it comes to zoning administrating, and then at the same time, go knocking on somebody's door about the fact that they're parking all their trucks along the side of the road, that their work and their business trucks and their supplies, and the neighbors are complaining about it. Doesn't want to do that, and he says he doesn't have the time to do it. But we need somebody to do it. We're to the point where we need an enforcement officer that can handle complaints from us in the city, complaints from our citizens, that situation or things are happening that they need somebody to come and take a look at. And it's, I think we've lived in a community, I'll specifically say the majority here, have lived in a community, a rural community that has taken 150 years to develop. Your pioneer ancestors came here with nothing and settled it and improved it and made it better. And there are traditions and feelings that are strong to those traditions and family. and beliefs of ways of life. But things are changing rapidly, and that takes us to sit together and say, okay, what can we do now to respect that 150 years of the Lees and the Spenloves and the Corneliuses and so on. We can respect how they feel and how they live and how their forefathers lived and what they've done. And be mindful of that. And at the same time, be mindful of the people who are coming and retiring or putting in businesses and building the town in this period of explosion. There is no more place between here and Zion National Park for any commercial work to really be done or developed. This is it. And everything's being filled up down in the rest of the county. And we've got Yogi Bear water parks or whatever they're called, and water shortages. And people who were having trouble finding places for their families to live in here, to be able to afford it. They can't afford it. We need to be talking about, excuse me, I'm diverting, but I'm not. We need to be talking about how we can make zones in our town and availability in our town so that my children or grandchildren or your children or grandchildren can have an affordable place and a dream to create some equity. Even if it's just a small 3-bedroom, 1-level starter home. We need to find ways in this community to have that kind of neighborhood. I know that nobody wants it. I know that the people that have the money want to come in and build $1 million homes. But there are ways to do this, and towns have started doing it. And I think that when we talk about all the short-term rentals, who's taking up the air in the room? The short-term rentals. Almost everything we talked about tonight has been short-term rentals. That's taking away from my grandchildren and your children to be able to have some space to have a dream to stay here if they want to. But most of us, if we don't change, we're gonna be like the Excels and the others who have moved on and sold their property and found a better place in Montana. But we're here to try and build a community. I think we can. We have to respect each other. We have to respect this history. And that's one reason that I'm here and I'm new, is I respect that history. So that's my feelings about this particular issue and some of the things we've talked about tonight. Done.
Thanks, Ken.
As far as
This is way too cool for me.
We'll go to Brian first. Go ahead, Brian.
My comment was just that I struggle with the wording of our ordinances. Everything sounds like it. I think Sean's right. I think we might need to do the process that we've been told to do. I said you were right, did you hear that?
Okay. A little louder.
Don't push it, Sean.
Anyway, I just have some concerns about the wording and the process.
I second
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
We ready for a motion?
If you guys want to make a motion, feel free to make a motion.
Make a motion that we postpone this particular item. Oh, I can't remember which one it is.
Crystal, this not having ordinance numbers is driving me absolutely insane.
It's really tough to be.
We're not assigning ordinance numbers until they pass.
All right, we're gonna have to talk about this.
Yeah, it's item A.
Got it.
Make a motion that we postpone item A on the agenda, referring to the enforcement regulations to our next work meeting agenda, so that we can further discuss the direction we want to take this. A second.
So, okay, Sean made the motion to postpone this and until our next work meeting. Wyatt seconded that motion. further discussion on this? Any further discussion on this?
Yeah, so one question, this would, so now the town would have a zoning administrator and a code enforcement officer.
We're just making room for that possibility.
This would make room for that possibility. Because it could, so if you read the definition, it's the code enforcement officer definition is an official designated to enforce all regulations other than building and construction regulations.
And the zoning administrator will
So
fall under the building and construction.
they could be the same person, but now they can be separated.
Comment.
Yes.
One final comment on it before voting, and that is that I'd like to see it moved on to the town council. There is always time to make adjustments down the road if they pass it, then maybe they won't pass it, maybe it won't pass the town council. But I think the idea of helping this town and helping create someone that can help enforce code for the town and all the citizens, and the need for it, as well as helping the planning and zoning administrator be able to have the time and the freedom to focus on what he really knows is important in that area. I'd like to see us push it on to the town council.
Thanks.
Comment on that. Ken, I do appreciate your desire to do that for the last 4-5 years now. On planning and zoning, I've been berated for making those suggestions to just, let's see what the town council wants. I think this particular issue needs a lot more discussion, a lot more involvement. And for the town council to just put this on a public hearing and say, go ahead, we've done all the work, go ahead. They need our input, and I want to go through our process that we've set up so we can put that input in there. And then once we figure out what's the best for the town, and we can push that forward. That's why there's a plan in zoning. So it isn't just the town council making a rash decision saying, we need this right now, do it our way. We are two separate bodies, and we make a decision and recommend it to them. So I do appreciate that, because I've had that argument many times, but I've also had that argument thrown back at me saying, you can't do it that way. We need to go through the process.
Thanks, Sean. If there's no further discussion, I have a motion on the table, we'll vote. Ron? Wyatt?
Yes.
Cameron, no?
No.
No, sorry, your name just left me. Ken, I know, just was gone. Sean?
Oh, yes.
All right, the motion passes, the item will be tabled until our next work meeting. All right, we'll move on to letter B, discussion and recommendation to approve or deny an ordinance amending chapter 16.22 standards for conditions by use. Discussion on this item.
You just review, Cameron, for the public as well as the rest of us, what we did discuss last time on this.
I wasn't,
Changes.
I wasn't here
It
last.
wasn't last meeting, it's the meeting before. It was October meeting.
For October's. I'm trying to find the ordinance, hold on. I'll never get it right. I will open it up. Okay, so the purpose for these changes was to take our broad lodging definition and and broaden that out into defining specific types of lodging. The reason we're going to define those types of lodging is so that they could better be regulated in the zones. So you can see that we took one definition, which was definition 3, lodging. And then we've broken that down into to define and delineate the different types of lodging. All of these types of lodging have been asked about to the zoning administrator. And so he's the one that took these, and then we made changes along the way and made these definitions the way they are now.
So can I further that discussion with? It originally was to be put in 16.2, is it? For the purpose of, there's a lodging section that needs to be removed anyways, and we were just gonna replace these as supplemental information. Brought to my attention though that these are permitted uses in some of those zones. So it can't be in a conditional use section. So you had suggested putting them back into, actually having them as definitions in 2.12, which if we're gonna move these forward, they have to be in 2.12. And then if we need further clarification, we can do that. We can do that in the conditional use section for the ones that are conditional use.
Yeah, so there's no changes being made to whether they're permitted or not with this section. This is just to delineate the difference. So for example, in our commercial zone, short-term rentals are allowed in the commercial zone under a permitted use. But hotels, motels, bed and breakfasts are under conditional use in that zone. And so what the zoning administrator has seen is that when someone comes in to build, they say, well, we're just gonna do short-term rentals. But really, it looks more like a hotel motel and not a short-term rental. And they've kind of been able to push that line a little bit because we haven't delineated the difference between those types of lodging. So that's why you can see here, specifically the short-term rental definition. You can see that we've crafted that definition in such a way as to keep it with its kind of intended purpose of being a house that's being rented out, right? Not a little cabin that's thrown up or something like that. It's actually a house. So if you read the definition in that, that's what we've tried to do.
So I'm counting cameras, but the problem that I'm seeing with your definition is an only short-term rental unit is the only one that I think is still too, it's still too ambiguous. And I know there's reasons to maybe leave it that way, but as far as long-term and the clarification we need to avoid problems, we've got to say that it's a house. I mean, I've compared it with other towns, I've looked through, it's meant to be a house, a short-term rental unit, and we haven't used the definition. We've used it for everything. So I don't know how we deal with the mess we've made, but I know that the short-term rental unit needs to be designated from here on out as a house. That's what it's for. So I know that's the problem, but I also know that otherwise it's too ambiguous.
So you'll have to clarify.
If you say that you 10.
No. See, so you don't, let's not get those two separate things.
No.
Let's focus on the
Then you don't say
definition.
that it's a house, yeah.
Okay.
You need to say it's a house. And the
Okay.
reason why is because otherwise your other conditions can be exploited and or it leaves room for confusion and people coming back and and having problems that don't need to be had. If we make it in the definition, a house, which I know is problematic, it's still, it's what needs to happen long term. So I don't know how you guys want to handle it now, but long term, that's what that definition is meant. That's, it's referring to a house, and it is in every city I can find.
Instead of a dwelling unit.
Instead of
on a
dwelling unit,
permanent
and the
foundation.
unit makes it ambiguous, and that's a problem now.
Okay, so pause. Okay, so I'm just gonna go through, because I'm not downplaying what you're saying at all.
I don't want to say.
But I'm just gonna go through this definition real quick, okay? A dwelling unit on a permanent foundation used for lodging for less than 30 days with individual toilet facilities, kitchen facilities, and living area. All must be sufficient for long-term habitation. So I fail to see how that's not specific.
Don't make me say it.
So say it,
Under that definition, it says a dwelling unit. It doesn't specify that it's a home. That it should say that it's a home that meets standard building codes or whatever. Okay, this could be any kind of building. This could be any kind of building, and that's not, I know,
but a home can be any kind of building too.
a home that meets a single family residence that meets building code. That's what it needs to say.
That's what you would like it to say.
Well, if you want the definition to be consistent, right now, you've got everything else covered. Okay, so there is a definition, of everything else. This just makes this ambiguous, and I know it's helpful because we've used this definition all over town. But as far as moving forward, it needs to specify that it's,
So we haven't used this definition all over town.
That's
why we need to
sorry,
firm
let me
up
be
this
more specific, let me be
definition.
more
There's been a
It has
loose,
been used, a loose definition under the
Yes.
term short-term rental unit has been used in various places
yes,
in the past, not everywhere. Right.
yes.
So we do need to firm it up, and I know all the reasons that we need to firm it up, but moving forward, it has to be more specific than it is now to be effective at what you're trying to do, or what you're saying you're trying to do.
So I hesitate to, because in my opinion, the short-term rental is any type of living space that could house someone permanent. That's my opinion on it.
It's your opinion, but that doesn't, as far as the precedents of other towns and a more legal definition, that's actually not. That means we're kind of inventing our own definition for it, which is why there's as much confusion as there is.
So my thoughts with the short-term rental definition like this is because Virgin has always tried to maintain buildings in a community feel, a smaller town feel. Always tried to do that. We've discouraged large buildings, we've discouraged hotels and motels. And so it's my goal, in my opinion, with this definition is to continue to encourage this type of building, even if it's in a commercial zone, because it maintains that feel, right?
No, I disagree. I think you're trying to squeeze, you're trying to broaden the definition past usefulness. I think if you want it bigger, it's a motel or it's something else. It's some other kind of, I don't know what it is, but this is a residential, it's a house. That's what it's in. I mean, you can look through the other cities and stuff, but I think part of the reason it's confusing is because we are trying to broaden the definition too much.
Yeah, yes, and I think so. You're expressing some of the same concerns that were expressed in the meeting, right? In our other open. Yes.
These are my concerns.
So, but I've always felt that my solution to that and the best solution to that would be to tighten up the restrictions in the residential areas to make it exactly what you're talking about, but in the commercial areas, to leave the definition looser so that we can still encourage the development of smaller structures that can be used long-term, but are primarily used for short-term.
Okay, but the term short-term rental unit is really made for houses in residential areas that you allow to be used as short-term rentals, and so to use this definition, it doesn't make sense, it contradicts what you just said. So, I don't know, I don't choose the rest of the definitions, I'm not okay with that.
Okay.
Particularly the wording when you talk about the,
We'll go to Kent and then Sean.
I agree with Bronwyn, in that I'm confused with a little bit what you're trying to do. So if you're wanting to go more commercial with short-term rentals, like, let's say, individual cabins on a permanent foundation with toilets and kitchens and stuff like that. I'm wondering why we can't, once again, begin to have stiffer restrictions and more and better defined restrictions than to just let it have an opportunity maybe for commercial to do something in short-term rentals. Although we could argue that short-term rentals are commercial and require a business license. I'm thinking I see where you're going, but I think you're trying to take it beyond that tradition and of what a short-term rental is, and in a way, allowing short-term rentals to compete with Wildflower or a motel or something like that, that may have cabins or even an RV campground that has that, or other individually owned short-term rentals who are maybe just have one short-term rental that is attached or not to their home, and that's their part of their living. So I would like to rehash this and see if we can tighten that up somewhat, and I can understand you better.
All right, thanks, Ken. Sean?
My original concern with this particular ordinance was that the definitions here aren't definitions, they have too many regulations actually in the ordinance. And so we're going exactly against what I've been trying to do with the definitions all along, is take the regulations out and put them in a place where they can actually be a regulation. In order to truly do that, right now, the definition for short-term rental is so ambiguous, it doesn't matter. Anything, as long as it's 30 days or less, that it's clarified. Now, Cameron in his one of the next ordinances we're gonna look at has started that work of defining what the regulations in each zone will be. I like that approach a lot better. But regardless of that, we do need to figure out better definitions for each one of these. And I mean, these will be sufficient. Could be sufficient for now, but I've never liked them.
I think it's sufficient for now and one mistake.
Yes, and that's why I'm like, I haven't been comfortable with this, except we do need currently to define something, because right now, a short-term rental can be a motel, can be it's just, if you're doing it less than 30 days, it's a short-term rental.
Well, that's why we put it to housing.
So even just with that, that's not gonna fix that,
No,
because
you're right.
because right now we can have a teepee or a wagon
Well, no,
can be a short-term rental, right? until we start working at it like what Cameron's been working on, so.
No, it is, yeah.
So are these really definitions? No. Do they need to go in definitions? Yes, we need to change every one of these definitions. But do we want to work on them, continue to work on them one at a time, or do we want to approach all of them? I've noticed here bed and breakfast is not even included. It's not in our ordinances at all. It's in the definitions, but yet they're in our zoning.
Balancing the need for some definitions, I get that. And I think there's room to compromise on that, except for the short-term rental unit that has to be more specific. And since we're doing all of a chunk, I'm not going to.
But most of the specifics need to be in the ordinance itself, not in the definition. That's all I'm saying.
Thanks, Sean. Anyone else have any further discussion on this?
In the 2.12 definitions, it has its short-term rental or STR as an entire residential dwelling used for short-term rental. So
That's great.
It says residential.
Well, that's where it's.
Yeah, that's in the short-term rental overlay.
no, that's just in the
No,
definition.
that's the definition.
That's the current
2.12.
That's, so we've been using it wrong, even with our own definitions.
No, what does it say?
An entire residential dwelling unit used as a short-term rental for any period less than 30 consecutive days, regardless of the type and extent of consideration or I don't know what that one. Yeah.
Remuneration is just my.
Well, the M and the N are backwards. Yeah, received by the owner. Notwithstanding the definition of the dwelling unit within this section, boarding houses, lodging houses, hotels, motels, tents, trailers, RVs, mobile homes, and congregate living facilities may not be in this. So it says in basically the residential unit for no longer than 30 days can be an SDR. The rest of them cannot be an SDR.
So that's what it should be.
I like the word residential. So I think that needs building codes and everything else.
And the SDR unit in the same section says a residential dwelling unit located in either a residential, agricultural, or high resort zone of the town, which has received an SDR permit for use by owners.
So it contradicts, so we're getting them out there.
So,
Go ahead.
I'm listening what you're saying. If we take the definition that's up here, which I think is a better definition than the one that was just given. And we put residential dwelling unit on a permanent foundation used for lodging for less than 30 days and left everything else the same, just put residential in front of that dwelling unit. Is that fine?
I think that makes it better. I think that makes it so we can have some definition. That's better.
Can you make that change? I think.
You
Can
don't have it in
you,
your thing?
or can I do it online? I
You're
can,
in the Word document.
in the Word document. Okay. I don't have any problem with that. I think this is still a better definition
So residential,
because
is that sufficient? Is that?
I think so. So in the BULU, it basically just states that this is what a residential no longer.
So you're gonna put residential unit or residential dwelling?
residential dwelling unit.
Dwelling, okay.
So, and then in the other definition, it just goes through a motel, et cetera, et cetera. It's not a SDR. But this.
The problem is that we haven't defined the difference, other than it's a residential unit. So someone puts up a teepee, they say, well, this is a residential unit,
But
because it's
actually
used
what you
for
have-
housing.
But what you are doing in the next one does do that.
What I'm doing in the next one does put specific regulations on
Yes.
in zone.
Right, but we just need to
Yes.
make sure that we know that this is a residential home.
Yes, residential, that's fine. I'm okay with that. I don't have any problem with that.
But if it is a residential home or dwelling, and there are different scenarios.
Residential dwelling unit. That's, I believe that's what we're
Not
calling
unit,
it.
not unit. Residential dwelling.
Are you keeping it the same, Cameron? Just
Yeah.
adding residential in front of all?
Yes,
You need to go
But
back,
not unit, right?
Then you have to go-
Residential
it's
dwelling.
a dwelling unit.
because
In our
that's,
definition.
I'm pretty sure in our
Yeah.
definition, we call them residential dwelling
Okay,
units.
that's, I don't have my computer, so I will just on that. That's good.
Like residential hosting unit,
Dwelling, that's, okay, gotcha.
one thing, one unit of measure is residential. Any other discussion on this? Ken, do you like that?
Yes.
But just residential
Let me see if I can.
Residential dwelling, not residential dwelling.
and take out.
But I don't.
No.
think
Just add it.
Just add
Yeah,
residential.
because it then goes with, just add residential.
Dwelling unit is good because you don't want, yeah. it's good. No, Residential
Okay, well, I
dwelling.
think, are you going?
I changed the bottom one. Did you change the
I
top
just
one?
changed the top one.
Oh,
Is that how you want it?
it didn't show changed on mine. So I'll make a motion that we recommend approval of item number B, ordinance amending chapter 16.22 and chapter 2 definitions with the change of adding residential in front of dwelling unit under the short-term rental STR unit definition.
And did you say that add these to the 2.1?
Yes, this will be, I think it states 2.12. But yes, definitions will be added to 2.12.
And replace the other ones.
Yes, I'll make that amendment, that these would replace any existing definitions already there. So there will not be two definitions for short-term rental, it'll just be this one. Okay. That's my motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Cameron made the motion, so Sean seconded the motion. Any further discussion?
Much effort as we put into this, I think town council is gonna tear it apart, so we may see these again. So I'm ready to move forward. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll vote. Bronwyn? Is that a yes?
That's it. Tentative, yes.
Well, there's no tentative about that. It's a yes or no?
I'm teasing.
Okay, it's a yes.
Yeah.
Wyatt, yes. Cameron, yes. Kent?
Yes.
Yes. Sean?
Yes.
Yes. All right. Okay, so now we'll move on to C. Item number C. Discussion and recommendation to approve or deny an ordinance amending chapter 40.08, 34.04, 32.06. So these are the specific regulations for STRs by zone.
Okay.
So for all the comments about the ordinance that was up for public hearing about changing the short-term rental. You know, I'll blame that on Bronwyn that that's not here. She was going to work on that. and bring it
I'm
back to
working
us.
on it, Cameron. I'm just doing it.
Okay, Bronwyn's working on that ordinance
Why are you gonna help me?
anytime except for when
Except
I'm
for when
working.
you're working. We didn't tell you to do it. I know, I got you.
So after about 6 o'clock,
I'm gonna
just
come
give
up.
me a ring.
Okay,
Come on up.
all right.
Just don't bring Wyatt with you, because then there'll be three of us. Okay.
I'll do this.
So we are working on that ordinance still. It's not forgotten about. We're still working on that ordinance. For clarification, for those that may not know, we only allow short-term rentals in new subdivisions. Currently existing subdivisions or older parts of town that were already developed and not recently subdivided, cannot do short-term rentals legally. So for Lenny and Karen, those short-term rentals that are operating next to you are not operating legally. We don't currently allow it. Yeah, so, but for those that don't know, that may be watching or listening, we only allow them in new subdivisions that receive the short-term overlay designation, which they apply for. All right, so this one is the specific ones, right? So we'll start the discussion on this ordinance. And thank you, was it Pat? I think it was Pat. Thank you for noticing my mistake in not getting that transcribed properly into the ordinance. Sorry about that. That was just a mistake. Those should read word for word. The proposed wording in the ordinance below should read word for word. So my apologies on that. I wrote this, so that was my fault.
Is that the 10 bedrooms thing?
No,
Yeah,
was
it that?
No, it was, you didn't have something here that you had.
Yeah.
I think it was the
C was not down below.
C was not, oh, yeah, I mistranscribed C.
I thought it was a different.
Okay.
I'm so confused by the very first short-term rentals in this zone cannot be constructed. So
40, that's in the commercial.
That's the chapter 40 is the commercial zone. Yeah, so this is to your point, we want them to be houses.
Yeah, so right now, this
So-
is referring to residential houses in the commercial zone right now.
Yeah,
How's
it's
that?
referring to short-term rental
Right,
residential dwellings. Residential dwellings. in that area.
which, what would those be then? Because it's, what would those be then? The houses?
Yes,
Residential
houses, houses,
Or what? Because it shouldn't be more,
Broad ones.
they could be
There's one up on the highway,
yeah,
the, by Red Coyote area right there, there's a red stucco house. That one has 3 units there.
yeah, but
It's
it's,
in commercial, so,
but it's a
area.
house.
okay?
but it's a
I
house,
see them divided up.
but it
And it's
has,
just divided up.
but there's 4, like there's the primary residence where the guy lives, and then he has 3 auxiliary units that are attached. It still looks like the house.
Well, how's it metered?
It's all metered off of 1 meter.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so that's a house.
yes.
Got it.
But when you say it's just a house, then I hesitate because then I think, well,
Well,
is his a house or is it a house with a couple of apartments attached?
right, but the way that we define that is it's off the same meter, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is to make sure there's no misunderstanding. This is a house. We don't want you putting up a wall tent and calling it a short-term rental. What, we don't want wildflower being called a short-term rental. Okay, I'm trying to do what he wanted. I'm trying, even if it's in a different way.
You're doing really good until you get to 101.
Okay.
Let's talk about that.
The only thing I do see with this 40, and it was brought to my attention by a member of the public who talked to me about this. With the 40, they would like to also see that, make sure that it's clear that they're not travel trailers or recreation vehicles. And so they thought that should also go up there under 40.
So it's to a new 40.08, is number 2 an old definition or an old?
Oh, yeah, that isn't,
It's already in there.
That's already in there. They must have missed it because it was,
Yeah.
actually, I think that should just be in red. I'm pretty sure that
Yes.
doesn't already exist. Oh, it is there. Okay. They missed it because it wasn't in red. And then I missed it because it wasn't in red either. That's my big catch. All right.
Would you take a clarifying question?
Sure, go ahead, Paul.
Does the town already have definition for single family housing already built into the code?
We do have a definition. We don't call it single family housing. We call it residential dwelling unit.
The language we use.
So the language we use is residential dwelling unit. It would be the equivalent of single family housing. So just to add on to that, this would be, or in the commercial zone, this would be more than, it could be more than a single family, like the property that Sean mentioned that has the main residence and 3 small apartments attached to it. So that would not be single family housing at that point. So the short-term rental is meant to be a house, but not necessarily a single family in the commercial zone. And yeah, I understand that can be confusing.
So item C, I think, that makes no sense. And also, I think we are gonna be restricted by fire code and stuff. I don't think we can.
Yeah, the 10 bedrooms.
Yeah, I don't think we can do that.
So you would say 5 bedrooms?
I think it's more
Whatever
about the tenants than it is the.
Yeah, it's people. It's about how many people.
So as far as international fire code, what do they allow?
I have to look it up.
Whether they allow them or not, so that would have to do with the fire department and they would manage that on their end.
Right, but we.
I thought we'd make this base close to that. So 5, if you consider 2 occupants per bedroom. I don't know, if 5 bedroom is too big, that's abnormally large for a single family dwelling. And this would be the whole property, so.
Yeah. I don't know the right number. I don't want to put it out of the air. We need to find out from.
Sean, go ahead.
That particular issue was addressed through CCNRs in the last subdivision that we did approve for that. But CCNRs restricted the size of the house and the amount of occupants there if it was a short term rental. So we can shift some of that over to the responsibility of the developer to make sure that those numbers are lower and regulate it that way. Instead of, we have this is your max, but you don't have to reach that max. We can talk to the developer and say,
That's
this
true. That
particular.
max is crazy.
I agree, we need to look at the fire code and see if that's.
Yeah. We need to get in the range so that we see.
Anybody else have any comments on this?
Give us another number.
5.
Okay.
Because that brings you to 10.
Yeah, I think a motel definition was 5 units. More than anything, more than 5 units becomes like a motel, so. We could go off of that and say, look, if it goes beyond that, then we're talking motel style.
Darlene,
Yes.
is 5 too many?
Well, it's a problem of short-term rentals.
Correct, that's probably we'll address another time, but but for this,
5,
Ron was working on
5 instead
addressing
of
that.
10, is what he's saying.
5
5
bedrooms.
is
5
better than 10.
It's better. Thanks, Ron. Getting better.
Good job, you're better.
Okay.
And I'm not giving you a thumbs up.
Okay, gotcha, I got it. I will take one more comment from Lenny and then we'll come back to our discussion.
Well, I just have a question, size of the bedrooms, is that going to matter how many people are allowed in each bedroom? Because then your occupancy can rise. If you have larger bedrooms,
Well, the
right?
fire code will probably.
That is correct. That's something that's gonna be very difficult to manage.
Well, if you limit like 9 by 12, there's not too many beds you can get in there.
Yeah.
That was just my comment.
Limit the size of the bedroom.
This
Go ahead.
state doesn't allow us to regulate the size of ADUs, so
Yeah, that's true.
it's gonna be difficult to be able to.
So do we do it by occupants?
I would prefer to keep our ordinances for bedrooms because that's something that can easily be controlled at the building stage.
It's all new houses we're talking about, isn't that exist?
And then I think the occupant part, we let the fire district do whatever calculations they do, and if they say, no, this is gonna be more than 10 occupants, then they can require.
Maybe you need
I'm
to put that in the ordinance.
I'm quite sure that, Southwest Department of Health counts 2 occupants per bedroom when you build residential. No, you just did that, right? Any additional comments on this, discussion on this?
Residential. Or just prohibiting that, that's a change.
Yes, that would be a change for residential properties. We would now prohibit short-term rentals in residential properties.
In the residential zone.
In the residential, zone, not rural residential, but residential. Just for you. Roman. The difference between rural residential and residential is the lot size.
Yeah.
Um, It is definitely my goal to have affordable housing in Virgin, but I can tell you that I could not afford to live here long before we had any commercial development. And long before we had short-term rentals, I could not afford to live here. I'm only able to live here because I bought property over 17 years ago as a working family. So when we talk about the concerns and affordability and the desire to have families here, we have to understand that that problem goes far, far beyond short-term rentals and commercial development in the city of Virgin or the town of Virgin. Those two things, short-term rentals and commercial development, have not been the primary cause for unaffordability in Virgin. For families, for retired folks, that's a little bit different because they have much higher spending capability because of equity in other places. But for families, that has been true for a long time. Any other discussions on this item? I know this is the first time you all have seen this, because this was built off of discussions we've had over the last 2 months. So whatever the commission wants to do with this, if we want us to come back and look at it some more, great. Or if you want to move it on, that's fine too. I just want to make, I know this is the first time you've seen this exact wording.
I think you did a good job.
I think you did a really good job too, as far as what cannot be.
Yeah. we cannot get restricted.
I think I'd be comfortable with it if you made a motion, including the changes that we had discussed.
You want me to make the motion? Hold on one second. Let me make sure that I have these.
I wanted to do those for the things that would, define better.
And I do think that.
Now, we are gonna get to yours.
No, we're not gonna do
I don't know if more.
We will. We will. You know who's watching on the TV though.
Yeah, I know.
I know.
Sorry for those that are here for other things. We probably should have made a change and gone with this first. Apologies. So I will make the motion, we recommend approval of this ordinance, item letter C, changes to chapter 40, 34, and 32 with regards to short-term rentals. With the changes as discussed, from 10 bedrooms to 5 bedrooms, and ensuring that all changes noted in the proposed changes section are also represented down in the ordinance itself.
That's that.
So Cameron made the motion, Wyatt seconded the motion. Any further discussion?
The only thing I would add is just that we're up, as we're voting for this, just let's be aware that we have some other stuff, other things come down the pipe with this. So.
Right.
Ronald's working on
Hey, you brought him on camera to work.
I think, but like for the short term, I think this makes. good.
Yeah, I think it's good. I think to have those, some restrictions, good. Good job.
that. All right, we'll vote. Bronwyn,
I'll vote for it, yes.
Wyatt,
Yes.
Cameron, yes. Kent,
Yes.
Sean.
Yes.
Don't come on Christmas, John.
Hmm?
Don't come on Christmas. Maddie never
Really?
to work on this. You can come to my house
Never home.
to celebrate Christmas.
I'm gonna ask your wife before I come on, because I bet she has.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to letter D. So this is the zone change from rural residential to commercial for the Long property. This property is gone through this once, and the only concern was that it was not a complete acre, which lot lines have been adjusted, and it is now a complete acre.
And we've made concessions.
Yes, when they made those changes, they made those changes.
So we made it.
So I don't need any discussion on this if y'all are ready to vote.
Did somebody want to make a comment?
So we were, it was passed, we came past, and I don't know how this fell through the cracks, because we CC'd Monica Wolcott and all the paperwork. I don't know why we're back, but maybe it's because I just want to say one thing. 20 years ago, Desert Gardens was the only subdivision that had ever come to Virgin. Virgin had never had a major subdivision, and your parents had some concerns, big concerns, and they thought Vince Blackmore on having that come with their big lots and their big houses. And those people wouldn't be LDS, and those people wouldn't have kids. And what's it gonna do to our town, and what's it gonna do to our way of living? They had the same concerns, and they fought Vince hard. And he fought for Desert Gardens, and here they come, and now the post office is gone, the church is gone, and it did change the town. But I like that everyone's gonna understand that you can't shut the gate behind you. Progress is progress, people come, you have to work together, it's all gonna be okay. You guys will work through all the short-term rentals. The residential hosting is a great way to make it affordable for families. Angelia is from here, she's got a little residential hosting license. It's a great way to make it more affordable. It's so fun to see you kids grown up. I don't know if you remember me, but then now you're on the side of the table. Your parents were in this audience back in the day. Anyway, it's all come first full circle. It's all gonna be okay. Everyone's gonna be okay, but don't come to this town and say you want to keep it this safe, the town, because you were the ones who changed it. It's okay to have change, some change. So open yourselves up a little bit. It's all gonna be all right. But anyway, I hope you vote for us.
Okay, thank you, April. So what happened with this ordinance, what happened to this zone change in the past, for clarification, for those that don't know? It was brought before, it did come before planning and zoning, and a recommendation was made to recommend approval on the condition that they had 1 acre. When that came to, when the engineer and the town staff reviewed that, it was not 1 acre, and so it was never taken to city council for approval because it did not meet that condition in the past. So now that it does meet the condition, we're just bringing it back because it's been such a long time. So
So
that's,
it isn't even now, it's been recorded, all is well. Okay.
yes. And they recently changed the ordinance to allow smaller ones, provided they were bordered by another commercial property, so.
So let's roll that one for nothing.
No,
No, you have to come back.
No.
Thank you for coming back, that's all.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we recommend approval of the zone change for a lawn property at B-2-1-11-1. Is that what it is?
Yes. Sean made the motion to recommend approval, Wyatt seconded the motion. Any further discussion? We'll vote. Oh,
Just real quick, on your point, if that's a perfect place for a short-term rental, but it's not a perfect place for a house. So if you change that residential dwelling.
We're just about to vote for you, I would just sit right there.
I'm just saying, you can't put a little house next to that.
I'm just kidding.
yeah. Yes, which is why we made that change about the lots.
Yeah.
They made that change about the lots, and if they're bordered by commercial. We understand the struggles between commercial and residential.
I'm just saying, because unit, that resident or the dwelling unit is a great definition. This, I don't know, it has to say house.
So we'll vote, Bronwyn?
Yes.
Oh.
Oh, wait.
Boss, you have a comment? Oh, go ahead. Okay, sorry.
I have spoken with some of your neighbors, Jennifer, and Kevin Stout. They have no opposition. And, so I will, for the future motion, yes.
Yes. Kent's yes. Wyatt? Yeah. Bronwyn? Yes. Cameron, yes. Sean?
Yes.
The motion passes. 5-0. Thank you. We're sorry that it took so long. Okay. So we'll move on to letter E. This is the Jeff Lee 12 Mesa subdivision. Okay, and so some background information on this one. Jeff Lee has been working with this property for a long time. 3 years, 4 years, 2 years. Year and a half. No, it's been longer than a year and a half.
Well, yeah, it started in February,
Almost 2 years with the subdivision. Before that, he was doing other things with it. Right? So it's almost 2 years. The city had always defined the short-term rental overlay as a designation that was given after or at the final plat. Currently, they now look at the ordinance and say that it's no longer a designation, it's a zone change. It's a zone change, so not just a designation, but a zone change for an overlay. So Jeff had already received his designation and made his declaration before. Is that correct, Jeff? Or is that the other one?
It's not very clear if it's at final plat acceptance or in the beginning process, and with all the changes, that's why I applied for it. It's like, when my attorney looks at it, he's like, we could argue it either way, you better be safe.
Okay, so they're still working on their final plat. No, your final plat was approved.
No.
Still working on the final plat. He's asking for the overlay zone now, because it's viewed as a zone change at any point and not just a designation at the final plat. Okay. There, that wasn't confusing. You guys are great, smart people. Okay.
So we have quite a few of these tonight. I would kind of recommend that we just go through outline the process and make sure it fits everyone. Otherwise, Paul at council will go through and make sure that the council goes through and says that. I would like us to review that, even though we know what's in there, we know if it fits. We've already studied that. But if we state it, I think it will clarify it for the town council. For example, it says at the concept plan stage, they need a narrative saying that they're going to do this. That written is that. That's why I make the suggestions that some of these changes need to be done. Make it all disappear and change it completely, that's fine. There's some major problems in here. They're not going to be able to meet all the criteria because there's conflicts in
each
it.
other. Yeah, no, we can't, that's the problem.
So that's what I wanted to
Everything we
say.
send through under this overlay zone is confidential.
Yes. So what parts do we want to make sure we cover so when it gets to council time, we're not berating the developer saying, well, they didn't discuss this in planning and zoning, so we have to deny it. That was what was stated before, where all of us have gone through. So it needs to be done now. This is proper timing for it. We might as well make it. I just want to make sure that we cover everything that's in the ordinance now. And then later on, we can adjust it. That's why they're out here for the zone change.
Well, I've seen this final plat many times and I know that it has a north arrow on it, so that one is covered. Does have a north arrow. Hey, don't shake your head at me, it's specifically listed in here.
It is very specific, and that's why it's redundant.
Sean, if you have concerns about any of these sections that you've gone through.
Is this in 56.08?
This
or
is in
60, we're talking number 8 is the one that gets hashed over every time. Things like, does it meet the general plan? Does it, is it necessary or desirable to provide a service or facility which will contribute to the general well-being of the neighborhood and community? Those kind of things are in here. Again, I think it's.
That's why it's gotta get fixed, and I don't know if we can, I mean, if we rubber stamp it, or we actually do it, I don't know. We need to fix, that's our problem, we need to fix it. Not theirs, so Cameron, they're in charge. He's
So-
the one who's gonna do this.
What I would recommend when I looked into this, what I would recommend was, because you're working on this right now. But it is a big project, right? No one. I'm glad you're working on this. Let's just put
Yes,
that,
you are.
right? But I think that we should, this is my opinion, we should move forward with any of the applications that we have before us that have been working on this, that have had this.
There's promises been made, to be honest.
Well, yeah, it's not necessarily promises, but but with the understanding that this is allowed, this is what we do,
Right.
right?
These were all started before.
Yeah, this is what the ordinances say, right? So,
And you had the subdivision that just passed before, that was started after.
But that was after was after.
so the Staples subdivision was started after this one.
Right,
And then just passed.
no, that's.
But while we work on this, I think with our recommendations that we make, I think part of that recommendation would be that the city council look at putting a moratorium on the short-term rental subdivisions after those that are in process,
I agree with that.
or those that are seeking it have, with the understanding that they were before the moratorium.
I agree with that.
While you and the rest of us work on adaptations to this.
I think that will save so much heartache and headache and legal rather than.
Because when I read, Sean's talking about 8, and when I read this, it's mostly subjective. And so I skip it, because I don't do subjective
I know
well.
you don't.
So I always look at 3, because those are nice concrete things that are easy, right? They're not subjective, they are concrete. Subjective things just get people in trouble, so. But that's my opinion.
I think
That's how I
really-
look at this.
That sounds wise to me. I really think that's wise.
Sean, do you have a comment? Or you want to go through any of this, or do you have concerns about this?
If you guys have read through 8 and you're okay with that, I want a statement in there that we have looked through the requirements in 8 and we agreed that they've met these requirements, and that's why we're recommending.
Well, what we're doing is acknowledging that there's problems,
Yeah.
but we've done the best that we can, that we're gonna put a moratorium on it. So that we don't have any more problems.
I'm not talking about the moratorium, I'm talking about the T's crossed, the I's
I
dotted.
get it, that's how we're gonna do it, city council, because we
You don't
can't
like
fix
being
it.
called that.
We can't fix
That's after the
it.
time too. Just an acknowledgement that we have properly, as best we can go through, that's it. I don't care about a moratorium or anything like that, past that.
I don't think we've properly done
Are you confessing?
it. Yeah.
The problem is that we have 2 applicants that have been through the process and around and around and around.
I'm okay with the one on 700 West.
No, we only have the 2, right?
Today we have 3.
Right, but the other one's not, that's not old,
No, the Hal Cannon one is new.
that's new, so that's what I'm talking about, that would, in my mind, that would fall under a moratorium, would it?
They're here today,
He's here
this
today.
ordinance,
Well,
we can't do that.
well,
He's made a declaration
okay,
today.
well, we can, I don't know, I have to do it, but we vote on it separately. so we
Yes,
can
he's
see.
going on.
Okay, could you help me understand the talk of the moratorium?
So state law allows the city council to place a moratorium on developments for a short period of time. I believe it's 6 months. And they allow them to do that while they or another body reviews an ordinance to make changes. Right, so it's kind of like, hey, we can't fix our problem in time. We can't fix it right now in the amount of time that we're getting all these applications. So we want to halt this for 6 months to give us time to fix our ordinance.
Is this our recommendation to the town council? or
I
is
feel
this
like
their
It's their prerogative. I feel like that because they can do it whether we recommend it or not. But I feel that since Ronald's working on that ordinance, that's something we should recommend.
the moratorium ordinance?
The moratorium.
A
is for short-term
moratorium.
rentals.
While we work on the short-term rental ordinance.
It means we won't issue any more short-term rental overlay.
But I'm concerned about the people here,
We got them.
They would-
They would be before that because they will go through the process.
and that's my concern. I'm against that.
Yes.
You're
It's
against
okay,
that
I'm
or
against
for it?
that.
I am against passing an ordinance onto the town council for short-term rentals,
Period.
period,
Okay,
not period. I mean, I want to pass the one on 700 West, that's ridiculous that's not. that doesn't even fit in.
But then other ones.
But the ones with Mesa and Edge and Pocketville, and is there another one besides those three?
It is already passed.
Edge is done.
No, Zion Edge is on our committee. Oh, yeah, Zion Edge is already passed.
Yeah.
Correct.
So-
It's Zion Landing.
Zion
Landing, going by your house.
Okay, it's passed,
No,
no. And is any of the past that we've been talking about? Has the town council passed anything?
Only
Zion
one
was.
unit.
so Zion Edge, Zion Landing.
Yeah.
Was,
I'm in
was,
favor
was done as a designation, not this zone change process.
of passing that on favorably to the town council.
But not the new ones that are seeking it for the first time.
And I'd like to make a comment about that.
Okay, go ahead.
I said for basically these things before as well. And I think you know my feelings about them. But I'd like to read to the town planning and zoning on 60.02. Section C1. Subject to the conditions set forth in this subsection, an owner of real property may apply for and obtain simultaneously with the final plat approval for a subdivision. In other words, it has to be at the same time as the final plat approval is approved. And that, to me, I don't know that it goes through us, but probably it does. The town shall not approve short-term rental development overlay zone designation for a development unless it finds the following. A, this is section 8.
Yeah.
That the proposed zoning designation and development of dwelling units as STR units on a developed wide basis at this particular location is necessary or desirable to provide a service or a facility which will contribute to the general well-being of the neighborhood and the community. B, that a development-wide short-term rental use of dwelling units will not, under the circumstances of the particular case, be detrimental to the health, safety, or general welfare of persons residing or working in the vicinity, or injurious to property or improvement in the vicinity. All things can be put into that. We can have a month-long discussion about what that means.
Yes.
That the proposed zoning designation and development of dwelling units as short-term rentals on a development-wide basis will comply with all other regulations. That the proposed zoning designation and the development of dwelling units as short-term rentals on a development-wide basis is expressly authorized by the governing documents of the development, CCNRs, bylaws, or homeowners associations. there's more, but I won't go to that.
You're almost done.
My strong feeling is that we, as I've said before, short-term rentals, you look at what's happening, not just here, but all around us. It's all filling up pretty fast. We are the last bastion on the edge of Zion National Park, and everybody wants to do short-term rentals or residential housing, but let's do an overlay in case our housing doesn't work, or in case the short-term rentals don't work, we can sell it all. Everybody's coming in and wanting to do this. It's money from the outside coming in. It's not us. I really don't think they care about us. They care about their development and the ability to make an honest profit. And the people who are living here need to have the opportunity to say, hey, this is injurious to me. It hurts. I'm concerned about what it means to my community. It's a small geographical community. We can't help but rub shoulders and affect one another, whether it be water, or whether it be waste disposal, or whether it be traffic on the highway, or whether it be a bunch of people having a party in a house at the bottom of Sierra Bella. We have to get a grip on what we want, and I think it's been too long since we've done a general plan and asked the citizens of this town what they want and what they need now. I am in favor of having short-term rentals in this town. I'm also in favor of having new residential housing in this town. I'm in favor of commercial in this town. And I believe that we all need to have a new look at what the general plan is, because things have totally changed since that was written. We have very few short-term rentals here. The void was being filled somewhere else. Well, the void is now us. And this is it. There's nothing else left. I don't think you can do them in Cooperville, but maybe I'm wrong.
So do you think that a moratorium on the short-term rentals will give us the chance to talk about all this stuff?
If you can put it on the ones that are being proposed here and have been for months and months, and we put off and off and off.
I
and
don't
it's
know
horrible.
legally you can do that.
I can vote against that.
You can vote, yes, of course, but I'm just asking, other than that point of.
I don't,
like the
I'm not
idea.
confident that I have a majority of my opinion tonight.
But I just want to know if you feel good about the moratorium.
I'm totally in favor of a moratorium. Sooner or later, there needs to be one to stop this. But I believe that there is another serious problem too. The people that live in Rio de Sion, for the people that live over on Pocketville Road. And what's gonna happen when, there's 5 cars that are coming in and out of that house, instead of 1 or 2. And what's gonna happen to the water runoff and everything else. So, and sewage and water and all the problems that we face today. So I'm against short-term rentals as an overlay or as a development until we can rewrite our general plan for what all of the citizens can have an input into and tell us what their feelings are today, not 5 years ago.
So our general plan is less than 4 years old.
4 years ago.
Less than 4 years.
I stand correct.
Thanks, Kent.
Quick question, how many houses are short-term rental that are in a short-term rental subdivision? Do we have currently operating?
I don't believe we have a short-term rental subdivision currently operating.
Let's focus, let's get back.
Well, if we have 0, how do we know it's so bad for us?
We have one that has started construction, and that's the one at 700, but they've only started construction.
Right, so.
So Cameron.
Oh,
Sorry.
this is Sean has.
We're good.
Anything else, Sean? Anyone else have any comments? Thank you, Sean, thank you, Karen. Why, you got anything?
Not that I haven't said already. I think it's really hard to try to deny these 2 that have been in process just as long as the one that has just been approved recently. I think it sets us up for legal liability portion.
When you say that, you mean.
Yes, yes, the cap.
No, they're coming here past business.
I think really any of them, because this was the compromise, that we don't want it in the old part of town much, because there's new subdivisions. If you have land and room to do a new subdivision, let them have their short-term rental. And I can be just down here, and if I want to do residential hosting, I can, but I don't need to do short-term rental. I'd actually prefer them, because then I don't have neighbors, bad neighbors for a long time. I have them one night.
I'm saying is he doesn't have a mat house next door.
Yeah, that's what he's saying. But you
Because
actually.
not everyone gets to enjoy
Come
that.
talk to me later.
Have bad neighbors.
That's not the case, but I'm sorry, I'm just. Okay, so. What. This is where as I reviewed this, as I read down through the chapter, that there's obviously some things in here that Kent brought up, right? So Kent brought up that number 1 where it says, subject to the conditions set forth in this subsection, an owner of real property may apply and obtain simultaneously with a final plat approval. So may is not a requirement, it's not an obligatory word. So they can do it with simultaneously, they don't have to do it simultaneously. Just to speak to that point. The very next line says that they can do it after the final plat has already been recorded, which would be after final
And
plat.
somewhere else it says they have to do the process. of
And then
to do.
later on in the ordinance, it does, I can't remember which section, it says,
It's number 3, application process 8.
yes, 3A, yeah, right there. At the concept plan, so. That's a mess.
Okay, all that's.
Okay, so I'm gonna skip past all of that. Alright, the stuff that I have not seen for this subdivision that would be required to have the short-term rental overlay was fences, walls, and other structures that are proposed for development, if they are. Okay. Haven't seen that. But he's also not completed his final plat yet. And maybe they're not going to have any of that, so that's why they're not being listed here, right? Lighting plan is not listed here. Maybe they're not going to have any streetlights, I don't know. But that too would be done with the final platting as well. Right, so E, he does have E on there, he does have the existing stuff. The drainage stuff has been taken care of, he's working on getting the final engineering for all the drainage. The contour and elevations, he has that, he has the north arrow. All right, and then the other thing that I haven't seen is the governing documents, the CCNRs. Having that clearly listed as short-term rental in the CCNRs with a dedicated manager. Right. So those are the 4 things. Now you can come up to the other part that Kent mentioned. Does it meet the general plan? Is it going to be detrimental? Is it desired? And that is just all subjective. Kent says no, I say yes, Ronald says I don't know. Right, we cover all the bases here, so without concrete data to support a detrimental impact, I can't deny a subdivision on those subjective measures. just don't have that data. For one, we don't even have one in the town yet. We don't even know how it will turn out in Virgin. Some of them that we have operating illegally are not doing well, but they're also operating illegally, so they're not being governed by these rules that we've set down, because they're just doing their own thing. And Utah's made it hard to prosecute them. I know that the council and mayor have been working on a solution to that, but I don't think one's been found yet. Hurricane's glorious solution went kaput, so that didn't work out.
Well, we don't want to get ourselves that.
So with the exception of those 4 things which can be done at final plating, I don't see any other reason. I don't see any reason in the documents to deny the change. Or Jeff Wood. Yeah, I'm only talking those.
Well, if anybody has any detrimental effects, they should mention it.
Yeah. So I don't know if there's any further discussion on it.
Yeah, he's already been honest.
Yeah, some people feel that way. Yes. Kent doesn't feel that way.
Yeah, it's not for that.
So I would prefer we entertain a motion to do something, no matter what it is, but I would entertain a motion.
Make a motion that we approve,
Recommend.
recommend approval for, what item is it now?
We are on
E. For item E on the agenda for Guava Mesa subdivision for a STR overlay zone. And then I want to say something about the 4 items that need to be met at final plat.
What about moratorium?
I'm not going to say anything about that.
We can do that separately. That's what I'm.
Because that's really.
So on condition that the 4 items mentioned earlier by you will be met at the final plat.
I said.
So Sean's made the motion to recommend approval. Wyatt has seconded the motion. With the 4 additions to be done by the final plat. For clarification, can I clarify those 4?
Yes, please.
So that would be found in Vulu chapter 60.02 point C point 3 point lowercase c lowercase d lowercase f and 60.02 point C, no, sorry. C? Yeah, C.8 point D and E, which are the CCNRs. Any further discussion?
Just point of interest. So those 4 points, we can actually say, yes, we recommend this until those are done, but those can't be done until final plat. So it's kind of cart before the horse, and that's why we have to add those in. I think we'll have to do that with all of them. Thanks for clarifying which ones.
So would the recommendation be to recommend approval, provided those 4 things are done at final plating or the designation will be revoked? If they're not. No, because the subdivision won't go in anyway.
Karen, am I allowed to make a comment?
Sure, we'll take your comment.
The thing is, you're approving a zone change, nothing else. So I don't know why you're interjecting all these other things about the plat.
We're interjecting these things because these things are requirements for the zone change. These are listed requirements for the overlay zone change. But they are items that he is currently working on to complete his final plat.
Aren't you just seeking a zone change and not the plat approval right now?
Correct.
So why can't you approve the zone change or just approve it?
Can I
We got
answer
ourselves
that?
into.
Go ahead, Sean.
I'll answer that.
Into a corner?
Yeah.
The ordinance
Remove your paintbrush.
says we have to do it, we're going to fix that.
Okay,
That's the problem we're at.
okay.
Motion and a second, we'll vote. Sean,
Yes.
Kent,
No.
Cameron, yes. Wyatt,
Yes.
No.
Bronwyn, no. Just need to write this down. We voted no for the report.
Hey, you guys fulfill the obligation. It was for the same.
It's my list for these kind of laws. So we'll move to item number F. This is a recommendation to approve or deny zone change for Justin Christensen Zion Landing subdivision, Pocket Building. This is an old subdivision. Originally Kevin Stout did this subdivision.
Can I say a couple things?
Sure, why not?
You made it your own way.
So we actually have, updated CCNR, the attorney has those, we've been going back and forth with the town's attorney, the town's engineer. We have all the things you mentioned done, going back and forth to get their sign off. We feel like if we're gonna do, if there is any SPRs that, owners, future owners choose to build, we have a 3-acre across the street that's gonna be designated open space. It's a better situation than some of these that come through, because there is some more open space. There's not as many neighbors. And so this, we feel like, we've done everything we can, especially in the CCNRs to, limit what can be built and what can, operate there. And everything will, go to the centralized manager, HOA votes, all of that stuff. That's it.
Thank you.
Is the final plat been submitted to us yet?
We submitted it for review, we're going back and forth with the engineer.
We're still working with the engineer and the lawyer, so it has not been submitted to us yet. So,
And I can say the whole process has been a little frustrating, because I started this over a year ago and, talked with Gene a bunch of times, and he said, just declare it at the end, and, this had now changed with the staples where, you got to get the overlay, and so there's been so much back and forth that from, our side, it's super frustrating because there is no clear, avenue to do it, and stuff has changed so much. And, we're going off of, what the current code is, but the current code is, it's confusing. And it has changed in that year since we've been working on this.
A quick comment for that, and I understand that. I want you to know that I as with Zion Edge, I have no problem with your development. I have problems with being able to deal with and control short-term rentals in the way the city at this point does not have that regulated in a way that's satisfactory to me. I really like your development. In fact, I like the developments that have been proposed to us here as housing developments, residential. I like all of them a lot. So that's my problem at this point. And I apologize for what we put you through.
Thank you. Justin, right here, Justin?
Yes.
Thanks, Justin. All right. Any discussion on this item?
Do you see any points that we might be missing that we have to include in the motion?
The same ones that I mentioned for Quail Mesa, I have not, he says he has those, but I have not seen those documents. They've not been submitted to us. Those are the only ones. I think it's also notable that I don't think anyone within the 300 feet of his subdivision is here tonight.
Yeah.
I think you're just outside. Did you get a letter? Nope, you're just outside the 300 feet. So no residents within the 300 feet distance from the property lines are here tonight. You're gonna make the motion?
I'll make a motion to recommend approval of the zone change, short-term rental designation, overlay zone, whatever we call it, for the Zion Landing subdivision on Pocketville Road. Again, with the 4 items that listed in 60.3 or 60.02 and C3 small letter, which one?
Yeah.
CDF.
Yeah, and also the CCNRs, including the language necessary.
I have a motion to recommend approval. Do I have a second? I'll second the motion. Sean made the motion, Cameron seconded the motion. We'll vote. Ronald? Ronald, no. Wyatt? Yes. Cameron, yes. Ken?
No.
Sean?
Yes.
I haven't had this bad a record since I was playing high school basketball.
Really?
It's good.
I wish you made high school basketball.
Okay, let's go.
Okay, I was just gonna ask you what team you played. Where did you go to high school?
Oh, no, Ken, come on.
Brigham
Some
Young
get
High
parents
School.
happy.
Brigham Young High School in Brigham City, huh?
No, this was a part of the Department of Education that Brigham Young was.
Nice, very nice. All right, so we'll move on to item letter G. This is the zone change for Alan Lee. Right, yep.
But I have no problem with the lot that is adjacent to the highway. But I'm concerned about a long arm extending far away from them.
So you do understand that that lot that it touches the highway, touches it along the highway where you cannot access anything. It's not,
I understand that, but it's the highway resort zone, and there has to be, I understand.
Gotcha. All right, so No, you're, look, go ahead.
I
finish.
think my concern is taking is what's the properties that will suddenly be surrounded by possible highway resort zone.
What properties?
What's right there?
That's highway resort zone.
Well, what's it next to them?
The KOA. It's all highway
Wait,
resort
I
zone.
need to, wait a minute, you need to look at that.
Can you bring the map back up, please?
Okay, so wait, let me. So who's,
That's not a map.
what's in the?
No, that's the small lot.
That's the
Yeah, that's
small
the small lot, which
The
is
big
no
lot
problem.
is right here.
one. Okay,
Yeah, so that
so
goes all the way back to so that's gonna surround.
this right here is the subdivision that just Jeff Staples amended.
Right, so that surrounds their really nice neighborhood. That means there could be like a
That
little.
borders them
fence.
on the
So
one
that
side.
means you get a highway, okay, so you got.
Yes, there will be a highway resort zone on one side.
Right, so that means you have that large lot neighborhood, and then
This
you
is
have.
the KLA.
I know, that's the KLA, but right there. It's still in,
This one,
I'm not tall, can you see that I'm not tall?
that one.
Okay, I'm just saying that puts the properties, we're gonna say this is north right now.
This-
To the top, properties to the top, or
That's mine.
that's you?
That's Jeff.
That's it.
Where it says that Red
What's
Hill
that?
Lane,
Red
that's
Hills Lane.
Jeff's,
Right.
that's up on the mesa.
BLM is yellow.
Yeah,
I
it's
the
the
dark
dark
properties is all yours.
And then what's
Next to Rio
KLA.
sign.
Yes. No. It's good to know what we're talking about.
Yeah, I thought that was, well, so where's Rio de Leon?
West.
Rio de Leon is, see all those little teeny lot numbers? It's that.
So they are surrounded.
No, they would be accessing, they would be using the same bridge. Unless a new bridge was required to be put in. But right now you access that property from that bridge.
Makes sense where we are, and then, so.
And then everything else you have.
So
The-
that's
the
exactly
old-
what I thought.
the
Just
old
so you know,
boys-
That's exactly what I
Okay.
thought we were talking about to begin with, so,
Okay.
yeah, you guys almost
Sweet.
more in swag with me.
All right, okay. So, it does have some residential properties on the other side of the hill. But they are along the highway. So we're in 40.
Crystal, could you minimize that a little
And this
bit?
is a brand new
To pull
proposition,
the
right? This is a
property,
brand new
concept property
proposition.
into
So,
here.
I mean, is there a way we can just finish what we're doing with? Is there a way that we don't have to do this? No? You sure you want it right now?
But there's the thing.
I don't know,
Can I make a comment?
please,
Go ahead,
I'm sorry.
Alan.
The only reason this was on potential commercial
Highway
is
resort.
because, what?
Highway resort.
Excuse me, highway resort zone was because there is no highway resort zone on the highway left, none.
Yeah,
And in February, we just felt like we needed a place to put some minor businesses and stuff over there. It does not touch any residential property except that piece I just sold, Jeff and them.
right,
Every other piece of property that it touches is either a commercial or else BLM.
but you want highway resort, not commercial.
You can't have commercial there.
Yeah.
Well, and I don't know for sure that the Boys Home is commercial. Jack Wade Clifton's got a little piece there that comes over, and probably touches it in one spot.
Mhm.
And then that new camp to go up there comes over and touches it.
Mhm.
And Jeff and Stuart Perger's new campground touches, the stuff across the river touches. also.
Okay.
But that's the only, there are no residentials anywhere near
So the property on
Is
the west.
it. The only piece that would be
Only residential would be that piece I just told you.
Okay.
Is there anybody here with these properties that's here tonight?
No. Jeff. Well, Jeff is here, yeah.
And Jeff's property is,
On
The entrance.
Red Hills Lane.
Red Hills Lane. Wrong, that's north.
The other was.
there's one concept I'd like to briefly bring up and not discuss tonight.
Okay.
And that is my concern for how deep some properties can go. If they're only, if they touch on the highway, how far back can they go and be developed commercial?
So,
And I hope that we can work on some zoning and regulations and ordinances that would have some depth restrictions. So here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking of the BLM sale on Co-op Terrace Road, the auction that's coming up sometime this next year. And that property goes way back to behind. Beyond, yeah, beyond, it borders on my house, but beyond the BMX park and up and over the rise and everything else. So I think we ought to look at that. Highway resort issues and to how far the depth of an ownership property can go as it relates to other city residences and zones. Just a subject to talk about down the road. I'd like to make a motion on this issue.
So you can go ahead. I do have.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve this.
Okay, recommend approval. Ken's made a motion to recommend approval of the zone change for Allen Lee. Do I have a second?
second that. Some discussion.
Sean seconded the motion. Further discussion.
Okay, I just have a quick question. Clarify so the town council knows that we did ask the questions. Was this properly notified? All the letters sent out? Crystal?
You ready to go there? Yeah, right now.
It's late. Just please say yes so we can move on.
No light.
Yes, it was sent out 400 feet or probably more.
Or probably more because the property is pretty good.
Also.
So thank
I
you.
always go more.
Yes.
They were here.
No.
So Cameron,
This is.
you see those folders right there?
Yeah.
Hold, these folder,
Over what?
these, Alan's folder,
Is it the same one that's on our drive?
open it up. See that black right there?
This.
Why you want to see it? 16 feet.
There you go.
Okay, I'll find.
More than happy. I just want to make sure that it's stated. So we did look at that. We did review. That's taken care of. This is a zone change. It's a zone change. That's all we're looking at this point. It meets all the criteria according to the ordinance that I've just been reading here. So,
I just wanted to clarify that the location, if you look at 44.06, the location for the highway resort zone has been extended to properties that are not touching the highway on this side of town. For properties that are east of that, east of this road, 700 east.
It's greens. Yeah.
Green is open space. Yes, but that's the 30, that's actually. Yeah. It's beautiful. Yeah. So That right there, piece you're talking about is. That was only clarified. Any other discussion? Okay, so no further discussion. I have a motion and a second. We'll vote. Sean?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
Cameron? Yes. Wyatt?
I said abstain.
Abstain. Wyatt abstains. Ron?
I'm so sorry I didn't pay attention. What do we have?
Yes, yes, and yes.
Oh, yes, okay, I'm gonna be the. No. Why are you writing on the blacklist? It's not fair.
It's fine. What's your vote, Ron?
Is it?
No.
Because you guys are.
Okay. All right, so now we're on to the how can subdivision, how can zone change. And so I think that part of what Ken said earlier about people not living here and they may not have the same feelings about, that's understandable. That would not be the case for Hal. Hal does live right here in the community and he has lived here for some time. I believe he has 3 or 4 properties here in the community, right, Hal?
No, just this, and then our 2 acres is north.
Just this, oh, you sold the other one?
No, that's all we have is 10 acres.
Oh, okay. I was thinking you had another house for some reason.
We used to.
You used to.
Yeah. We used to have good time.
So how can has been in the community for a long time, he does live in the community. As far as I know, he plans to live the rest of his life there in the community.
Might not be a long time.
But hopefully he keeps making music videos.
At least music.
Very good. And anyway, so I would think that portion doesn't apply to Hal for sure. Yes, he does live there. Discussion on this item. Al, did you want to say anything or?
You know, I just like to answer questions. And we've talked to a lot of our neighbors who we know and told them that, I mean, we're not developers. We're interested in giving, being able to list this and with some flexibility to whoever does buy it. So we're not in a position to buy that. So we tried to sell it as an agricultural project property for 2 years. And with no luck at the height of the buying frenzy. So we're just looking at our options at this point.
Okay, thanks, Al. Discussion on this, why?
My concern with this is that there is no subdivision plan brought to us with this. So I don't know if it falls under the scope of the overlay.
Anyone else? Sean?
Just interesting that this one's a little more unique than the other ones, of course, because of where it sits. More of the old part of town, but it's in some ways not much different than what we got off Pocketville Road as well, where there's plenty of residential surrounding that area. As far as options available, let's say even if all 10 of those lots ended up being short-term rental, how would that change the character of that neighborhood? I don't know if that's something we can subjectively, arbitrarily decide. And of course, we don't know how those can be divided up. We don't know access to those yet. So it does make it difficult to make a decision when a concept plan
is in right in front of us as well. But our ordinances have made it very difficult for us to be able to say no to something when it says they just have they have to make a narrative. So when do they do that? And that's part of the problem with the ordinance. So him just asking for it
But there's no
is part of the
subdivision.
There's
process.
no subdivision there to approve. How can we do that? There's no subdivision. All the language has to be subdivision.
With the
Secondly,
concept plan, right? But our ordinance
Wait,
also
what?
says he just has to, he has to have a narrative.
We also just sent an ordinance to council that says STRs are prohibited in the residential.
This isn't
It's
residential.
not residential.
No, this is rural residential.
Okay.
Now, just on 100 South, let's see. What direction are we? Yeah. That side of 100 South. The B66B, I believe that one is,
It's white bison.
no, I wasn't talking this, I was talking, Chris. Schofield. And the Crossville property, that's all residential. Even though they're larger, I think they're 3/4 acre, they're residential.
Yeah.
So it's next to a residential.
Right, I
But it's not.
assumed that it went further into.
Well, and depending upon what they do with it, I mean, if they're trying to divide up into small lots.
They could come in and want to do it as residential.
Yeah,
And
which
then be
means,
able to put more lots and they couldn't do this short term.
right, so I just don't know if we have enough information.
Right, but also that's why it should be either a designation or a zone. That's where we're stuck with that, where he has to come in.
Well, what kind of hurry are
Under
you
the-
in? This will be a lot clearer next month.
Under the law, he can come in and just want us to do a zone change, because that's what zone changes are about. Doesn't have to have everything with it, you just designate
Well, he
yes
hasn't done any
or
part of
no.
the process yet, so I don't think, the other things we just sent through, they had all done, you know, substantial
Substantial.
pieces of the process. I'm not prepared to vote on this yet.
So on item C says STR development overlays on the purpose and intent of the subsection is to establish procedures and designating an entire subdivision or phase of a master plan development within the town where all the dwellings within the subdivision or phases are capable of being used as short. So in my mind, I don't know how we can do it if there's no master plan development. Does that make sense?
Yes, a concept plan, but we just approved 2 of them that weren't finished.
But they've got their plats in.
But we have to approve it because it's a zone change. Now, that's the problem with it just being a zone change, is we don't follow the process because a zone change is a separate thing than the actual process that they're trying to get at in the ordinance. So what we could do is we, instead of, we could extend it, postpone this one until that information is here.
That's a good idea.
But we can't just say, no, we deny it all together because he's already said, I just want a zone change.
So, yeah. maybe we
So
should-
anybody can come and ask for a zone change. And we need the information before we can determine it, but yes, you can ask.
Anyone else got any comments on this?
I want you to make a motion before he falls asleep. Or is that your math, please?
Now I'm considering the arguments.
Yeah, what's your comment?
It's, so the intent of this section was to be for subdivisions. But a zone change isn't,
That's why we need a moratorium.
but a zone change is different. Is a different thing. But then this does outline specific requirements for the zone change. But they're not requirements that. It's hard because those requirements are specific to subdivision, so. I just wish this wasn't a zone change, is what I wish. Like the intent, I wish it hadn't been interpreted as a zone change. I still don't interpret it that way, but I'm not serving on council, so my opinion matters that much. This was always a concern that if we opened up short-term rentals everywhere, that everyone would come and ask for it, even if they didn't really want it, just for the option. And that's why we made it a designation of a subdivision.
I don't know, I mean, it's still worded that way.
It still is in part,
That's
that's
the
true.
problem. That's the
That's
problem.
true. It's true. I'm personally, I'm inclined to, if the council is gonna see it as a zone change, I'm inclined to treat it as a zone change. Now, there's a bunch of stuff here that we would have to see. But none of that. The requirements are pretty minimal that we'd have to see. So we would need to see a concept plan, which that's super easy. Basically, we have the name and address, right? Location and setbacks of walls, building fences, structures. So all they would have to say is we're going to follow, we're not gonna build any structures, we're gonna leave that all to the builders, and they will just have to follow town ordinances. Basically, all you have to do for that one. Location and existing and proposed roadways, there's no existing roadways. So they'd have to do a sketch of where the road would be. And the existing of proposed drainages and utilities and fire hydrants. That's basically all dictated in code anyway. So you'd have to plot those on a map. And then the north arrow.
So in other words,
In elevations.
bring it for preliminary.
It wouldn't even have to be, it wouldn't even have to be, it wouldn't have to be as expensive as a preliminary plat. This is quite a bit simpler than a preliminary plat.
So you're up with a whole nother can of worms, right?
I know, and I don't like it.
That's why we need to just see what we can do.
So whatever.
Postpone it.
I'll entertain a motion for this one. Unless someone has further discussion.
Can I ask a question? Not you. Val, do you have time right now, or is this an emergency for you? Do you have another month we can get this straight, so you're not going back and forth like all these other subdivisions have had to?
Well, we'd like to list this as soon as possible.
Can you list it without this part done?
No, not yet.
Okay, I just don't know if we're prepared yet. I don't think we can.
And I understand Paul's concerns with it being, and other people's concerns. I just remember Paul's name. But it isn't. I mean, it's beautiful the way it is, but it's not mine. So I wish I could buy it.
Yeah.
Well, we're having actually to sell it to the neighborhood. I mean, that would be our best hope, is somebody that's vested in this community.
It's just hard.
But, you know, it's a lot of money. No matter what you look at.
Especially with 8% interest rates.
For me, I'm not prepared to make a decision. I don't have nothing, so I need to postpone.
Okay. I'll entertain any motions.
Make that motion. I'd like to make a motion that we postpone this until the next meeting, so we have time to get for him to submit further information for us to have some more clarity on the proper procedure.
I have a motion to table,
I'll table.
to postpone, to postpone letter H until our next scheduled meeting in January. Brian's made that motion. Do I have a second?
Come on, guys, we want to go home.
Want to say that, Ken?
I have mixed emotions. I hate to kick him down the road again. I hate to kick Hal down the road again.
This, no.
He's made music with my little brother.
Oh, conflict of interest.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Kent has seconded that motion. We'll vote Bronwyn, Wyatt.
Start with the other one.
Let's start this next.
I would have said the same thing.
We'll come back to Wyatt. Cameron is a no. Kent?
Yes.
Yes. And Sean?
You're waiting on Wyatt?
Yeah.
So it puts him in the hot seat.
Yes. It's up to you, Sean.
What
What
is
is your
your
vote? I voted no.
Then I'll vote no, and put him in the hot seat.
Wyatt, back to you.
No.
No,
No.
make your own motion.
The motion to postpone the recommendation has failed.
Okay, make the new motion.
Do I have a second? Do I have another motion? Go ahead, Wyatt.
No.
You guys were obviously not ready to do this.
Sean? You have a motion?
I wanna know what,
I've already voiced,
We don't have.
I don't feel like we can approve it because we don't have these things that are required for that zone. That's where I'm at. But I also understand why he's got it in the way he has.
So make a motion.
I make a motion that we recommend approval with the stipulation that all of the applicant approval process items, number 3C3, are met before it's continued on to the city council.
So I have a motion to recommend approval, provided that the applicant provide the items listed in 60.02.C.3. Correct?
Yes.
Available to the town council for their decision. Is that correct?
So,
that gives him a week.
Gives him 2 days, but I would doubt that this city council is going to get to all this.
No, they won't.
so the other thing is, do we need to put some language in there, just because we just put something through about not being able to be, we don't know what he's gonna do with it. I don't know. Never mind. It's a mess. We're into another mother, guys. We gotta do something.
Okay. So I have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Sean seconded the motion. So we'll vote Sean,
Yes.
Kent,
No.
Cameron, yes. Wyatt,
Yes.
Bronwyn,
Oh,
thank you. The motion passes 3-2.
Yeah, the town council won't get to it, so we'll throw it down. Fortunately, it's gonna take a long time.
So how do you understand what you need to provide?
Sort of.
Okay.
No, let's not go into it now. I'll figure it
I was just gonna say, you can get with any of us and we can help walk you through that, or Gene Garati can also help you walk you through that. Those things you need to provide.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Since when does this zone change require concept plans, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
Since they interpreted this ordinance as a zone change.
Yeah, since it's a mess.
It needs to be changed.
Yes, that's what
Yes.
we're gonna try to have that.
We're working on that.
I was wondering why it was changed and when, because it did not used to be that way.
This ordinance was written by a lawyer.
Because the lawyers.
Well, figures.
Yeah, that's too true.
Okay.
We make a motion on number 7.
Yeah, before we close, does anyone have anything? No, Bronwyn, nothing?
I'm so tired.
I'm excited for Bravo to get
Ken?
working on it.
Why do you keep talking? I'm gonna take this one too.
Sean's made a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second,
Bronwyn seconded that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
wait.
The town council makes that. It's not our.
I will go to town council and I'll recommend it. I'll get up.
We can't make that.
I have another question about the diesel. Why is it for a light in thunder?
I'm tired.
Because we can't get the mics.
Will you end up please on the?
Yeah, I'm actually back.
I wish there was.
Yes.
They have some lights in there.
So,
I was asleep. I said that. I said I'm tired.
hey, Lenny, the reason why we don't have enough mics for everyone